All right, it's 7 o'clock. It is Tuesday, February 24th, advisory meeting. So thank you all for coming. We have a full boat this evening. 7 o'clock we have the town treasurer, Donna Madden. Then we're going to go into a discussion with Dawn Lowe, and Donna's going to stick around. We're going to talk about OPEB, and then some folks from the Neshoba Regional School District are going to come in. And we have capital planning, so we have a long night ahead of us. And I think what I'm going to do is switch things up a little bit, and I'm going to just hold off all questions and such till the end, in the hopes of trying to get out of here a little bit earlier. Just given the fact that our last meeting we were here till almost 11 o'clock. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up on that. So Donna,
okay,
come on down. How are you?
Good. How are you? Well, we have a number of lines to cover. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We'll go accordingly. And the first one up is 145, right?
Yes.
I'm kind of working in the blind here because normally Linda's been great about putting all these things in there.
Numbers.
Alright, so guys, we're at 145, bottom of page 1. And so let's just focus on the stuff down below the line. Salary, stipend, all that stuff is built in contractually. Let's talk a little bit about software support. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that.
That covers Vadar, our collection system.
Oh, yeah.
And it also covers Harper's payroll system. I process our payroll through that. So basically, that number is the combination of those two.
Okay. And know that the increase is just something contractually built?
Well, yeah, Vadar, we have a 3-year contract. This is the first year of a 3-year, and they went up a little over $1,100 on the collection package, which certainly wasn't anticipated. And Harper's went up minimally, so between the two.
Yeah. Is Harper's on a year by year, or is that on a contract as well?
Year by year.
Okay, yeah. All right. All right, so now we're at the top of page 2, that continues over. Let's see. So a little bit down in office supplies, that's nice. Anything, well, the only other of note is the bank charges.
That covers debt, our continuing disclosure, and other debt charges is covered under. Bank charges is a little misleading, it's more like financial charges.
Okay. Such as, so is commissions to go out and purchase a bond or something?
No, it's every year because we have bonds out for the public safety in the library, I have to file continuing disclosure. And First Southwest is my financial advisor. And they charge a hefty fee for doing the filing.
Mm-hmm.
And then also each year we do a ban, and that's their charge for issuing the ban.
Not the whole 4,300?
No,
Okay.
it's those two things.
Yep. And so, obviously, the more times we go out and get a ban, or the town takes on more debt, on an annualized basis, this would also increase, because is it on a per transaction?
No, every year we do a ban. Mm-hmm. And it's through the State House, so there's no cost really of issuing the ban itself. It's just the financial advisors charge for touching it even. They don't even have to really do much, because basically I give them a list of, whatever we're rolling forward. We might have, the chipper, or, the fire truck, or, whatever we're doing, and we roll that forward, and each year they just have to issue it. It's not like it goes out to market or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's usually sent in out to area banks, usually do the bidding, Eastern, And those are the type of banks that get it. The continuing disclosure is over $2,000. That's a big document that I have to do every year. It's kind of like the state of Bolton. And then there's
So just
Someone-
annual fee disclosure.
annual fee disclosure every year.
Yep.
For as long as we have the debt, and it's the debt for the, primarily now the public safety and the library. There's some other land acquisition debt, but for as long as that debt's out there, you have to do continuing disclosure every year by March,
Okay.
so.
Other individuals on the committee, any questions?
Is there a way to go out for quotes and find a more economical way to do the same task?
There's basically only two real financial advisors who work with municipalities in the state, so, and we've had a long time relationship with them. They all pretty much charge the same.
Okay.
Alright.
Part of issuing debt,
You have
unfortunately.
a question on that?
I'm gonna,
Okay, at what point will you entertain questions from the audience? It wasn't clear to me.
yeah, I'll entertain the questions in between each person, so when Dawn is
So
all
at the end of Donna's, okay.
Alright. What's up next?
9/11,
9/11.
Worcester retirement.
Alright. So I'm gonna rely on you to drive this, since I'm at a loss on which ones we're going to.
Yeah, but there's a lot of them.
Alright.
Page 8, right? So you get this. What is that? Page.
It's right at the end.
Yes.
Bottom
yes,
of page
bottom.
9/11 Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment. But the actual
Stuff's across the top
is
page.
across the top. Alright.
Last year, we had a big decrease.
Yeah.
This year, we have a big increase.
Yes, we do.
And I've actually asked for a review of our assessment. When I got the information, I was expecting an 8% increase, which would have been about $20,000. So when I saw this, needless to say, I was a little dismayed by it. They did provide some information, number of employees, gross salary. I have got some feedback from them, but I am asking that it be reviewed. I don't anticipate a huge change, if anything at all, but in light of the increase. So I'm waiting.
It's a deeper explanation.
Exactly. I'm waiting for the actuary to give me, every 2 years, they do a calculation. And the differences from FY12 to 14 were more significant than I anticipated that they'd be. The number of employees, the gross payroll, so.
Yeah.
I have some, I'm waiting for the actuary to get back to me. I had hoped she would today. They didn't, but I am investigating it.
So could we just take a quick minute and allow for the newer members on the committee to explain this, and also for any folks that may be listening at home on the Worcester Regional, if you could just give a high-level description and how this all fits in with the collective town.
Sure. Worcester Regional is the retirement system that employees of Bolton belong to. If you work more than 20 hours a week, on an ongoing basis, you're part of Worcester Retirement. There are now 96 members. There's no more technically Worcester County. Years ago, it used to be called Worcester County Retirement. Now it's Worcester Regional.
Okay.
But there are 96 members.
And Bolton is a member.
And Bolton is a member of the whole. Years ago, I'll say 5 years ago, basically what they did was they took everyone's payroll and kind of divided it up based on kind of population employees. A lot of smaller towns like ourselves who had no disability retirements complained that we were kind of subsidizing the bigger guys. So they, over 3 years, converted from a payroll basis to an actuarial basis. So the first year it was 33% payroll, it was 10%, a third payroll and 2/3 actuarial, till they got to the point where now it's all actuarial. Our assessment is based only on Bolton. We pay for what we are.
Okay.
So we pay for the number of members, the number of retirees. We pay based on payroll. If we have any disabilities, which we do not. Years ago, there was an early retirement incentive. You get dinged for that because we had some people who took advantage of that.
And unlike a company 401k plan where there's a contribution made on behalf by the company as well as a contribution made on behalf of the employee, this is a straight non-contributory plan.
No.
By way, it's 100% funded by the town.
No, it's not.
No.
No.
Okay.
Employees actually today, who are myself, a 9%er, I contribute 9% plus 2% over 30,000. We are actually paying about, they've calculated about 95% of my pension I am paying myself.
Really?
Yes, yes.
So
it is, the town pays an assessment. Most of that assessment we're paying is actually the penalties for the unfunded liability of sins from years ago.
Yeah.
Worcester Retirement is based on the old-time pension system, based on age and years of service, is what you get. But for years, up till about 50 years ago, municipalities never contributed anything towards.
Yeah.
So then it caught up. The legislature first set that the unfunded pension liability had to be paid by 2025. Municipalities couldn't meet that deadline. It got pushed out to 2040. Worcester is on target to totally fund our unfunded by 2035.
All right. And so
So the bulk of what we're paying now, the 316,000, about 2/3 of that is the unfunded pension liability.
All right. And so in your example, where you said you put away 9%,
Right. Based
you
on-
don't have a choice.
I don't have a
You're
choice.
required to do that.
Yes.
And is it your decision to go over and above that, or
Oh, no. No,
So
you
you're
can't.
still required to do that extra 2% above 30.
Right, based on when you entered the system, if, I don't think we have any more 5%ers, but at one time there were 5%, then there were 7%, 8%, 9%.
Okay.
And it's always been 2% over 30. You can't contribute more. In a municipality, we're eligible, as opposed to the 401k, we can go into a 457,
Yeah.
which we do avail our employees to. But the pension system, you're required, there's no option.
Any questions on the makeup? All right. 'Cause in coming up with the discussion at 7:30, I just wanted to get a...
Yeah, it definitely does play into that.
All right.
So, I mean, it is what it is, but I am asking for a more detailed explanation, because after last year's meeting, like I was told, we were anticipated when we went to a total actuarial basis that the increases, unless you had large payroll, unless we brought in, 5, 10 employees, it should be pretty much smooth to 8% increase.
Yeah, I never liked the number last year. I knew the hammer was going to drop. I didn't expect it to drop.
I didn't expect it to be that low last year, especially when we went to full actuarial basis. And I was sitting at a table and everyone else was like, oh, I got an increase, and mine was really, really low, so I didn't ask. And this year I was at the table and I was the highest increase. So I don't know if maybe there was a fudge factor last year that they had to recoup. I haven't got the answer on that.
Even in fact that is the case, that is lousy actuarial.
It's yeah, exactly.
All right.
So I will, we plugged in what we got, and this 316, 341 is with a 1% discount because we pay our full assessment on July 1. I think it's like a 1.7% discount. Otherwise, people pay it in 2 payments, but if you pay it one time, you get the discount, which we always take advantage of.
Okay.
So I will get back to you, when I hear more details on the review, if they took pity on us.
Sounds
Back
good.
with a better explanation. The next, are we done with the timer?
I am.
Okay. 913 is unemployment. And I think we have been just keeping a placeholder of $100. I fight every claim that comes in. We get a lot of real crazy stuff. People who quit and they file, and I have to appeal, go in and do it. So, you know, that kind of is what it is. I think we've had one claim this year that,
Alright.
that I did lose, but, so I guess we'll keep the 100 and then go as needed. I don't know if you wanna, that's, I think. what
How
they've
much
done.
does it cost when you actually have to go forward with filing?
Well, there's no cost to file. In Massachusetts, municipalities can do one of two. In all businesses in Massachusetts, you pay a percentage of your payroll. Municipalities have an option of you pay as you go. So I don't pay anything unless we have a claim. So that's why every claim I get, I fight. Because if I lose it, we have to pay. You pay based on what they were paid, you know, the percentage, so many weeks. So if we were to lay people off, there would be, you know, they would be charges that we would be hit with, so.
So if we were to take a zero away, I guess the concern is, that I completely agree on the placeholder. The concern with, I guess, 1 is it may be perceived as, you know, an odd mark on a piece of paper, and so I think we would be able to get away with 10.
Yeah.
And still recognize a placeholder. Would you guys be okay with going from 100 down to 10 and they still recognize as a placeholder?
We
Fine
can
here.
put 0?
I don't know, for some reason, they've never wanted zeros in,
Okay.
in the lines.
So I'm good with 10 if that's the case.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, moving along.
Moving along, 914, healthcare.
Yes.
This is a little better news. We are part of the Minuteman Neshoba Health Group in Bolton. That is a joint purchase group of 19 municipalities and school districts that purchase health insurance. For us, it's a lifesaver because I couldn't possibly go out in the open market and buy health insurance for 42 people. So we, in the past years, 3 years ago, we had a 0% increase. Last year, we had a significant decrease.
Yeah.
Kind of unheard of. This year, solely based on, we've had excellent claims in our group. Solely based on, not, medical trend is very low now. Medical trend is only about 3.2%. Prescription trend is 22% now. Because you're hearing about all these drugs for Hep C that are $90,000 and all that, and that's just driving prescription trend through the roof. So all in all, we had a 5% increase, but good for us, why I decreased, I originally put in an 8%, and we were able to pull it back to only a $12,000 increase. 85% of our employees are on Fallon. Fallon only had a 2% increase. The Tufts and the Harvard had a 9.5% increase. We only have a few employees who are in that. In addition to that, we offer a flexible spending account to our employees, and we, through Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, we have a wellness program that we started last year. I hired a wellness consultant. I'm the chairman of the board of the Minuteman Neshoba Health Group. And so I think in time we'll see some significant savings from a wellness program.
And so can you expand just a little bit on the health? So is this, so there's 3 carriers.
We have 3 carriers, yes.
And
4 plans.
4 plans, 3 carriers, and there's a...
And also our Medicare coverage too.
All right.
We offer.
And you guys go out and, I mean, you essentially, just like every other organization, they come back and say, well, so here's what it's going to be this year, right?
No,
Or you
we're
guys are
self-insured. We're
Okay.
self-insured. So we determine our own premiums. We have a calculation that we go through. We get feedback from the providers. We do a calculation. We have a company that we work with, Group Benefit Strategies. We have a trust fund to cover because we're self-insured. For the last 4 years, the trust has actually subsidized the rates. We put in $2.2 million the last couple of years to subsidize the rates. So it's, like I said, I think it's a significant plan. Ours fluctuates. The beginning of the year, I was losing employees who were going coverage elsewhere, and now the pendulum has swung where all of a sudden I'm gaining people back.
Oh, they would go on their spouse or significant other?
Yeah. So over the years, it's back and forth, and now I'm picking up more people. So, it's, we offer a great insurance plan to the employees. The town pays 70%, the employees pay 30%. We just went to a deductible plan for the first time 2 years ago. It's been a little bit of a learning curve for the employees, but still, all in all, it's a very good plan.
Okay.
Life insurance, $9.15.
Mm-hmm.
We've been able, the $1,500 is more than adequate. I think it's been the placeholder for the last 3 or 4 years at least. It's not a very attractive plan. It's a basic insurance plan. The town pays 50%, employees pay 50%. It's $10,000 life, $10,000 accidental death and disability. At the end of this, I know you were interested in, I did get some information on some other options in addition to this. This is a traditional, Boston Mutual has offered this to municipalities for 100 years.
Yeah.
And there's been some move to try to get them at least to up it to about 25,000.
Yeah, so there was, Donna and I had a conversation, it was probably 3 or 4 months ago, and, she shared with me the benefits offered, and, I just, knowing a little bit about it, I asked her to inquire about the possibilities on what it would look like in terms of cost, and I'm not saying that whether it's a combination, a higher amount, chosen to be paid by the employer at their discretion, but $10,000 doesn't do much.
Yeah.
So that was the conversation. So she's looking into that to see what that might look like as a benefit enhancement for the employees. Coming from a guy who's very concerned about cost, but I think something like that is fairly common practice within.
Well, most municipalities offer a larger rate than we do. We tried a few years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of interest in employee only. I have talked to a few brokers. Colonial Life offers kind of the best package for municipalities as far as employer shared, employer paid, or employee. Most of it is all convertible, so should the employee leave, they can carry it with them, which is very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the best type.
So are you beholden to only focus with organizations that handle municipalities for certain rules and laws?
Well, it's because municipalities are so different than others in the way we have to pay and it's done. It's easier if businesses have
Some experience.
with
Okay.
municipalities. We don't have any kind of disability coverage, which is very unusual in a municipal. Like I said, we only offer that 10,000 life, we'd have no disability. Colonial Life they have an option that they gave me a quote on, and it would be a 50-50 shared between the employee and the town for a disability, a long-term disability. So it would basically kick in at 90 days. We could structure it longer, but I think 90 days made sense because it gives the employees at least to get some skin in the game and save some sick time. Employees here earn 15 sick days a year.
Most and they get to bank them?
And they get to bank them. Currently up to 120 days. There's an article for town meeting that allows them to bank those up to 150 days. But you gotta figure you're earning 15 a year. There are only a handful of people who, I think that we have 3 employees right now who are up to that 120. All the unions, all their contracts have increased up to, or a couple of them up to 150 days. So I'm sponsoring an article on the warrant this year to increase that to 150 days. But the long-term disability would kick in, for the quote I got, at 90 days. So if you had sick time, you could use your sick time up till then, and then the long-term disability would kick in. They gave me a quote. I had given them a listing of the number of employees, the salary ranges, whatever. The town share would be about $10,000 for that. So.
And that 90 days, that's generally, at that point, there is fairly clear lines of demarcation if it's something that's going on that's gonna get better or.
Exactly. Or they're gonna be out for a period of time. So that would cover the employee 60% of their salary for up to 2 years.
Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see more about that when you get more
Yeah.
information.
So, my plan is, and they offer a host of whole life, term life, that I'm gonna roll out to the employees as 100% employee this year.
All right.
And let's see,
What do we have left? 'Cause
916
916.
that's the Medicare.
Yeah.
We added 1,500, and we think that should be sufficient to that line, based on the, 1.45% for Medicare. So that is it. The only thing that if we could go back just to touch on, because every year it's always been kind of a description, back in my budget on 145,
Yep.
I do have the educational assistance line, $800 over the years. When I first started 10 years ago, it was 5,000. It's been a kind of a moving target. The last few years, we've talked about it. Last year and the year before, I did have an employee who took advantage of it. I do not have an employee now.
Okay.
So what we've kind of done in the past is, or the discussion last year was we leave it at 800 if for some, even though it's supposed to be first come, first served, but if for some reason we had a run of employees who were interested, that we would come back to the committee. I don't anticipate that with the employees.
Okay.
But I did want to bring that up as something that we've talked about in the past.
All right.
There was one question that, in discussing with Julie today, that we had on the fire truck. There's no debt service currently, so we don't know if we need to borrow for that truck, or if we're gonna need to this year, because that would again be on the ban. If we do, there would be a principal and interest payment, so we have to plan accordingly if that does come up, so keep that in mind. Well, it depends on, and we also couldn't remember if there was a discussion if we were going 5 or 7 years on that.
We went, what did we decide, 7? Oh, no. Do you remember?
I always want 7.
I think we were 7, but I think it's 5.
And since our average fire truck has lasted 20-plus years, I think 7 is pretty conservative.
Yeah, I think we could.
Yeah,
I recall 7, but I'm not certain.
Yes, I did too.
Yeah, we in our notes, we didn't have it, but I mean, we could do either, that's not a...
And just so you know, the fire chief has the specs into me, what are hopefully the final specs into me for the fire to review one more time and to review the supporting documentation that needs to go with it. He got it into me probably mid last week, and I have not had time to review it yet, but it looks like, to me, there's no reason why we can't get the process rolling on that pretty quickly, but it takes a long time to build a fire truck, so I don't know what borrowing we're gonna have to do when yet.
So that's what's driving the uncertainty with Donna on when that gets going.
Yeah, I issue my ban in June, so I have to know what I'm borrowing for by the end of May.
Okay.
So,
So what is it going to, I guess, so you need
so
an
we have some
answer,
time.
but you need an answer by May. So Dawn, do you think the chief and the whole process on there?
Why has it taken him a year?
I'll let the chief answer that.
Yeah, I thought maybe you might know an inside conversation or something. I just don't know. I hope it doesn't go up.
I'm sure they don't go down, but...
No, they don't go down.
So what's your estimate on coming through in May with some type of number to then
We get a quote and they don't last for so long.
give Donna the ability to go get a ban and therefore impact this whole process? I'm just trying to get a sense of probability on if it's...
I would say, once we go out to bid, which I would think we're talking weeks now, that we can do that. Let's say 4 weeks, just to be a little conservative. the chief and I agreed that 45 days is probably the right period to advertise for response. So that gets us, it's basically March 1st now, so that gets us to to May 1st. So I would think we should have a number in May. It would be my expectation that we would have a number in May.
And you need a number in that.
I need a number the last week of May to plug in for our band. You know, we have everything else set to go, you know, to roll forward, and is there other anticipated short-term borrowings that you've come across?
Yeah, I don't,
We're about to find out.
Okay. Oh, that's true, you have no plan coming in, so yeah,
Yeah.
let me know.
all right, will do. Okay, thank you.
We ready to move on to the band?
Yeah, so, questions?
No.
All right. Dave?
Yeah, on the 145 line, the salary line goes from 90.9 to 93.6. Is that a step increase?
A step for both myself and Audra.
Yeah, okay. On the retirement assessment, you've indicated you're going to look into that much more thoroughly. I would hope you would make some kind of formal report back to the advisory committee or the selectmen or something, and that it would become a public document almost as quickly as you release it, because I think that's a big deal and the public ought to be able to know about it, and we should be able to have a pretty big discussion about it. And I think it actually ties into the OPEB issue as well.
Well, I mean, you can have a discussion on it.
To comment on that.
You can have a discussion on it, but the assessment is.
I understand,
is
I
assessment.
understand, but it's a big deal, and it has implications for other parts of the budget. I mean, just as we're going to talk about the school budget tonight, and that has terrific implications for the rest of the budget. On the 916, I think I know the answer to this, but the Medicare line item, that's just a 1.25% on the whole payroll, except if we have some people who are making over 122.5 or whatever the cutoff is.
Yeah, it's 1.45 on all of payroll.
All of the payroll,
Except,
because
yeah.
we don't, well, if we have anyone over 122.5 or something, oh no, Medicare goes on everything, that's right. So, yeah, so it's on the whole payroll, okay.
And
last-
that increase is just based on increases in payroll
Yeah,
and
right,
salary.
yeah. So it's your best estimate of what 1.45% is of what the whole payroll is.
Right.
And the last thing on the 800 for education, if no one's using it, I wonder if we couldn't have that placeholder be 100, and you'd be coming in for something almost under any circumstances if someone shows up and wants to use it. It's not a big deal, I think it's...
Well, I would really
38 cents
personally
a
hate
house.
to go that low, only for the fact that we have always said that it's on a first come, first served basis, and 100 wouldn't cover anything. So,
Whereas there are some things people would come in for that 800 would cover.
well, right, because we don't
Oh, I
cover.
see, 800 is a max.
Well, 800 isn't a max, but it's not like, oh, I want to take a seminar. Seminars are covered under individual budgets. This is if someone's actually enrolled in a degree
In a
program.
class. And that's, it's actually
And
low for
the
a
last
class.
person who did it, she was doing her master's. And the 800 didn't cover a course. It covered about 2/3 of a course she was taking. So,
And so all she got was the 800.
right, she got
So what
800
you're
each
doing is
semester.
establishing a maximum amount, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
I like that.
All right, so OPEB.
Come on up, guys.
Hold the folder for that.
You're gonna hang back.
Good evening.
Yeah, the more the merrier.
My chair doesn't have wheels.
It does on Thursdays.
Yes, it does.
Stan?
Oh, I already have one.
Thank you.
Sasha, do you have any?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, thank you.
You got share.
This, what you have in front of you, is we just got the 2014 numbers today. So this gives you kind of a breakdown of where we are year to year and the total net obligation.
And what you have for a plug number in your budget package tonight, and it's a plug number in there just for the purposes of discussion, which is what a plug number is 186,540. As Donna said, we didn't come up with the latest number until this afternoon, but the subcommittee that was appointed by the Board of Selectmen, consisting of the town administrator, the town accountant, the town treasurer, and Stan as a selectman's representative, reviewed our situation and came up with the recommendation that this is an obligation, well, with the observation that this is an obligation that we need to start funding. And the longer we wait, the worse it's going to get. And it's not something that's going to go away. So the longer we put it off, it's just, we're just buying, you know, we're just buying a bigger price tag later on. So our recommendation, which was made prior to the announcement of the school department's assessment, which we'll be talking about later on, is the full arc, what we would need to do on an annual basis to start keeping pace with this, which was $186,540. I think it would be irresponsible to not fund it at any level this year, whether it's the full level or something less than that. I don't think we can, I just don't think it's responsible to take another zero this year.
Can you share this that you handed out? It starts in 2010. Is that when?
That was the first year you were required
To start
calculating the arc. We contract with a company because we are so small. We provide them with all the data and they run the report for us. You have to do it every year. Every 3 years, they do a full recalc on it.
So you mentioned when we were talking about 9/11, the retirement number, and you said the 316 number represents about 2/3 of past transgressions. So that what you're also talking about is people who are already retired.
Yes, that is part of.
Okay. So if this 186, and Don, I do agree with you that I don't think we can go any further. But if we stick to a schedule of 186 here on out, it's not going to impact that by 186 or even knock it down by a third. Or,
Not a penny.
Yeah.
That's still out there. It's just starting to keep pace now. We're not making, as Donna said, we're not making up for the sins of the past.
Yeah.
At some point, there'll need to be some sort of a lump sum payment in there, but we're not proposing that this year.
Yeah. And what's the total? So, the total obligation is 386 that we're behind, or it's the addition?
The 385.74.
Okay, 385. All right.
As of June.
What questions do you guys have?
Wow.
We need to get.
I know. I'm gonna take a deep breath.
Who we got on that
I think, you had mentioned when we met, the three of us met, that if we don't start funding it now, you know, they're not going to look favorably upon us, and there's an implication of our credit rating.
Right. Our bond rating could be impacted. I mean, certainly, you know, I know there's no anticipation to go out and build some big thing that we need to do massive borrowing. But the rating agencies can periodically just review someone, and, you know, they are asking, you know, have you set up a trust? Are you funding that trust? Are you funding that trust,
Yeah.
you know, to the cap? You know, we set up the trust a couple of years ago. They want to see a plan. We don't have a plan.
On funding it partially versus funding it to the cap, do they rate you a lot more unfavorably or just slightly?
Well, our financial advisor said, she doubted that anyone would be downgraded based on, not funding to the cap or not funding.
But funding it in general?
But funding, they look at your stabilization, they look at your free cash, they're gonna look at this.
They're gonna basically say, Bolton's on this, they figured out that it's important to
Right,
start.
and they don't want you to do, okay, one time we'll do 185 and then, we won't do anything for a
They
couple
wanna
of
see a
years.
regular-
They wanna see a regular,
Okay.
they wanna see it part of the budget.
Are you-
It's not anticipated that this be a budget article. They want to, a warrant article. They want to see it as part of your budget, that there's an intention to continue to fund.
So did I hear you correctly, Dawn, that you were, this, the 186 or the 190, if we change it up to that, it's almost like, that's the seed going in, and then we would potentially, I know that's the arc, but we could potentially come down or move up, depending on, I'm looking at this fiscal year
You're right.
and all of the craziness
Oh,
that's
yeah.
happening with snow and ice in school and stuff. So is that number flexible within that line item, or will that hurt us for them to not see a consistent?
Well,
I mean, if you drop it to
I
$5,000,
wouldn't want
it would
to
be not
see
so
it go
good,
from
but-
there to 50 to,
Right.
that kind of thing. I think as long as there's a consistent approach to fund it, I think that would be,
Yeah, and
reasonable.
consistency, I think. is
Um,
really important
so the-
for
the
them.
And
186
the
is-
kicker is, right now it's a footnote in our financials, what it is.
We have a fund or
In
something.
2018, it becomes part of your balance sheet. And I think that's when a lot of municipalities are gonna say, ooh, this is really hurting. Because right now it's a footnote, you just kind of breeze over it.
Yeah, and I think there's enough current events to see what has taken place when not addressed. I mean, on much larger scales, obviously, but and the remedies that they've had to in decisions made to solve this.
I don't think it's a legacy of, I don't think it's a legacy that we want to keep on passing on.
I think, to Don's point, I think it needs to become a line item in the budget. We need to find some ways to fund this. To your point, we're not necessarily going to be borrowing anything big,
Right.
capital, but a lower credit rating does have a potential impact on valuation and all those other things. So there's potentially more damage there. And I mean, in terms of funding sources, we're kicking around an idea of possibly, bringing in some additional solar, where we could tap the revenue for that to fund this. We still can look at the meal and alcohol tax, which we passed up, and many towns have done that. It's not a lot of revenue, but it's something, because we don't have many avenues to bring in additional revenue. And I think we need to, maybe take another look at that as well. But
So the 186 is the number this year.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would almost like to see, almost like a formula that says the amount contributed is the number. In a given year when this, and this are, favorable, we take an additional, I don't know, you pick the formula, 0.5% of the overall town budget, and that money comes directly from free cash and gets added on top of the already, number, so that there's something in play. I agree there should be a baseline number, but it's almost, to me, this is similar to, an individual going about, building his or her retirement plan. You pick a number that you need to do just to make the math work. And in a given year, when whatever it is, your salary has increased or you're having a good year, you throw a little extra juice into the fire. And so I think the formula, I don't know where you guys are with this, but I would like to see almost like a formula built into that.
Yeah.
And I think it would also, it would simply add to the degree of importance that the town is taking upon this, to say, we've gone so far as to say, we have a formula built in to do
I think we can
this.
easily get together and do that.
Yeah.
Are you guys, is this gonna be presented at town meeting?
No, this
There's
is
gonna be a-
this is a line item in the budget.
Yeah.
This is
Line
all
item.
part of the budget.
So it's a $186,000 line item add into our budget with no real explanation except people that are gonna come and tune in and watch this.
Well, they'll have, I mean, if they want to
I
chime
mean, there'll be a
in.
slide, I'm sure, from the advisory committee on it. The advisory committee does the presentation.
Okay, gotcha.
I think that was a hint.
Will the implementation of this cause line item 911 to start to ramp down?
No, no, it doesn't affect it at all.
Not even
They're
ever,
totally,
ever?
no,
Totally different.
no.
No.
No,
Two-
not 9/11 will ramp down at 2035. How's that?
On its own.
I won't be here, but at 2035,
But it's-
it will ramp down.
But it's not due to this.
But it's not due to this.
That long.
Well, I mean,
It's-
if there's a whole mess of retirees that suddenly drop dead, it'll ramp down.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But do you really want that?
Yeah, but you hit the
No,
nail
I was
on the head
hoping
with
that
the
it would
gravity of
ramp
the
down, you could
situation.
take the
I mean,
savings.
Yeah, no,
Worcester's
This- this-
liability
this
was.
doesn't help
Do you remember
9/11.
the number?
Oh, it was substantial.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Yeah.
I mean, we're what, 2 million, I think, our unfunded liability
Well, for the OPEB, yeah.
for OPEB.
Yes.
Right, sorry, for OPEB. And I'm assuming this is like the equivalent in the Worcester system. There's 2/3, you said, percent of, that's the unfunded liability side of it?
Well, that's for the pension.
Right, right.
this
So there's
is-
pension,
this
there's
is for-
OPEB,
yeah.
and, but in other words, it's the same concept, that there's this liability looming out there
Right.
that nobody's
Right.
really paid attention to.
This is solely based on health and life insurance, what we're talking about here, for current employees and retirees.
And just to know, and not to steal thunder from the conversation that will follow at 8 o'clock, but the district has no plan or idea what they're gonna do with their OPEB problem. Is that reasonably correct statement?
We have discussed it,
Yes.
but we do not have a plan.
Okay.
I know. That's horrible.
All right.
If this is health insurance and life insurance, does it change 914?
Yeah.
No.
Above and beyond all of that. This is why.
Why?
No, it's,
This doesn't help anything over there.
Yeah, it's totally,
I will get educated.
yeah, it's real ugly. I have a whole binder on it, that's how ugly it is.
it's, 914 is for our current premiums. This is for going forward.
All right.
All right, so, yeah, that was, so I thought this was, I thought this was part of retirement. So where are we on unfunded liabilities regarding retirement?
Well, that's what I had said, the number, the 316 that's in 911, that right now, the biggest portion of that part of the assessment is the unfunded pension
And
liability.
we're on track to catch that by 2035.
2035 is Worcester's target. The legislature has given them to 2040, but we're right now on target for 2035.
All right.
A mere 20 years.
So
So what's our
that's
target?
pension
We don't have a target because we don't have an algorithm yet.
for OPEB,
For it to be fully funded, our town, on a town level.
for pension
We're
or
talking two
OPEB.
different-
Yeah, we're talking two different things.
9/11 has nothing to do with this.
Yeah, 9/11, because we're part of
Right.
Worcester Regional,
No, but I'm
that's
asking for this.
2035.
I'm asking for
Oh, for
OPEB.
OPEB, no, we don't have
No, we don't have a formula
We don't
yet for
have a
when we can
formula
catch
yet.
up. We would love to do a projection to do.
Yeah, I mean, if
For my
that's...
slide.
Right. I think what we're attempting to do here is just start funding
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
And it really is a drop in the bucket for what is out there in terms of liability.
Oh, yeah, there's
Not
municipalities
to
that have...
say it's not
Millions and
insignificant,
millions
because I
of
think
dollars, right.
there's a value to funding it and showing, on the books that we are just
Right.
taking the initiative.
Okay.
For example, Lancaster just, I don't know if they've done it, if they've either just done it or they're about to do it, they're gonna put $1 million into their OPEB because they got a one-time lump sum from the sale of their cell towers, or cell towers that they had over there. So,
That's a
another
convenient-
possibility to look at.
And that's what a lot of municipalities are doing. They're using like Stan had mentioned, hotel and meal tax.
Mhm.
They're using solar, they're using cell tower revenue. Because it's relatively new revenue, and in a lot of cases, it's not dedicated to something yet. So to earmark it
Yeah,
for that.
No, that's a good idea.
And is that, you guys would discuss that? Selectmen, that is, or?
Yeah, well, I mean,
or the
that's
OPEB
just
group?
some information I've collected
Yeah,
on
yeah.
what other
Yeah.
municipalities are doing.
The folks that have been so helpful on on advising me on the solar RFP initiative, if that does come to fruition, and I'm hoping to determine tomorrow whether or not we've got some viable candidates out there or not, depending on what that revenue stream is and when it comes online, that is, as Stan said, that is something that we could look at targeting, but right now I can't even quantify that. I don't even know that it's actually going to happen, let alone quantify it.
Does it look like we'll know by
The
this time next
indication
year?
is that
Oh, sure.
it's a small
Okay.
number.
Sure. Mhm. Well, relative to
I
this,
mean,
it
the
certainly is,
indication that we have, it's small number.
Mhm.
So I
Or
guess
even buy
what we would
police
probably need to develop that formula you're talking about is this the number we're gonna go forward with for this year?
Well, it should never really go under this, you're saying, from here on out.
Well, I'm just,
I don't
you know,
know.
that's
I don't
what.
know. I would rather, we're still hashing out a snow and ice, and
It's a
we're all still
goal.
hashing out a school budget.
It's a
So
goal.
part of me
Right.
says, I would love to, but there's gonna be constraints this year, and if we're not gonna override, I would take a hit here, start funding it for sure, but take a hit here to not have to override.
I would think that this is as good a plug number as you're gonna have for
Yeah,
now.
I'd say
And
let's
then you
use
can do
this
some
number
modeling.
and let's see what
You can do
else.
some
Because
modeling
this
as
isn't
you
in
go through the
stone
budget.
yet, right, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm okay with using it as a plug number, and yeah, I would, given where we are, I mean, at least just from a capital planning standpoint on the lightness relative to past years, I wouldn't mind trying to throw a little extra to this to make up for the 4 or 5 that we haven't. So I don't know what the number, 200, I mean, whatever, but I think, I think this is the minimum number.
Yeah, let's lose that as a placeholder.
But we will get together and work on a formula to recommend.
And to know that end date, because I think with such a big infusion of money and, being put into the budget, that people are gonna wanna know when it's gonna end.
Sure. Well, the formula begets the end date.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly, so.
Yeah.
And I think
whenever
it's
that-
also, I think we, I'm just thinking bullet points for the slide, a separate trust already been created. I mean, just there comes with,
Well, it's gonna go into our report.
well, yeah, no, I'm just saying, that just comes with a piece of.
Yeah, and what you have to keep in mind too is, once you start funding the trust, it reduces your liability, which is a good thing. So it's not, you will see these numbers go down a little bit, not just based on what you're funding, but it's calculated in.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Dave, yeah.
What is the assumed rate of return on this fund, Donna? The same as the pension? The Worcester fund?
I think what the company used was 8%.
8%.
I don't know that they're
That's
doing,
fairly aggressive in today's environment, so
it
the
is.
situation may be worse than it
Is it the
seems.
5 or 8%?
And how will the money be invested? Will the town of Bolton have its own separate fund?
We have a trust, it will.
And who will manage the investments in the trust?
Well, I would be going out, but there are a couple of companies that are currently handling these trusts. And this isn't, this type of money isn't invested like all the other money I can invest.
I
It's very
understand.
conservative. This money, you go out 30 years.
This
It's a
would
long
have,
term.
I don't see much reason for this, well, this could be a little more conservative than a pension fund because basically you're talking about liabilities between when people retire at, say, 58 and when they turn 65 and Medicare starts taking care of most of the costs. This is mostly about retirees' medical expenses before they become eligible for Medicare.
Somewhat, but it does.
I think
Well, it does
very
cover,
good,
it does cover the Medicare also. We offer Medicare plans that the town pays 70%.
Right, so, yeah, so.
So that is
our share
part
of
of
the
it,
Medicare,
right.
yeah. But that cost drops because the Medicare people are paying part of it, whereas between 55 and 65, we're paying the whole thing.
No, we're paying 70%.
Okay, 70%.
It's,
yeah.
We pay the same for active or retirees.
Well, anyhow.
But anyways, I would be going out to bid. There are a couple companies
Yeah,
that
but
currently.
it is a shorter average life here than a pension fund. I've been trying to think if the current low level of interest rates has anything to do with it. In other words, if we put the money in now, we're not going to get 8%, right? We're going to get 3 or 4%, which is what bonds are paying these days. But I haven't worked that out, but I just think that's an issue to think about.
Well, I don't think that's a reason to delay.
No, it's the delta between a 3 or 4% rate of return on a bond as an investment, or going out and building some equity into that, given it's a 30-year investment, that gets wiped out the door if you decide to go one additional year by not funding it. So,
Yeah.
Well, okay, I got the some numbers. I would argue against taking the whole step at once, because we do seem to have a large school budget increase coming. I think at the very least, we ought to subtract out the big increase on the retirement thing, because in a sense, these are both retirement-based expenditures. And if we've got the big jump on the retirement side, I think we ought to maybe take a little bit of a discount on the
It is a
overhead
big
side.
jump on retirement, but if you look at last year, it's almost neutral to 2 years ago. You know,
Well, but
duly noted, Dave.
well, just one other point. Stacia was talking about going up to the point where we'd have to have an override but not go over it. That's a huge tax increase in and of itself, because last year we taxed 500,000 below the levy limit. So to sort of keep taxes going up at a modest, I don't know, 3-4% or something, you've got to be 500,000 below the levy limit this year. So if you take this and the higher school budget and all the other stuff and go right to the levy limit, you're proposing a very big tax increase for next year. So I think that's another reason to cool it on this thing a little bit. I absolutely agree we need to get going, but I think maybe something like half the suggested level here until we can gradually work this into the budget. This is a big hit, and this is shaping up to be a terrible year for taxpayers.
That's why it's so fun to be sitting here.
Thank you all for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, Lorraine Ramasco and George King from the Neshoba Regional School District. Hello, thank you for coming.
Hi,
How you doing?
good, how are you?
Doing well. So you folks have had the, especially you, Lorraine, have had the benefit of hearing a little bit about what is going on with the town and how things are shaping up. And the idea of you folks coming in, I'd like for you guys to kind of shape the conversation on what impact and benefit the town of Bolton will be getting from your proposed budget. And then also I'd like to hear some of the reasoning on where some of the increases and in order to take advantage of that increase, where were there cuts? I can share with you, what the town has been doing. The police department did not move forward with a cruiser this year to account for other expenses going on. The MIS individual is looking at some creative ways to entertain reducing costs with computers. So I'd like for you folks to also share a little bit about what you're doing to manage costs within your budget.
Well, the budget, as you know, is increased a little bit larger this year than it has been in recent, probably in 8 years, I believe, actually. A good deal of that increase is driven by special education costs that we can't really control. And those are costs, out-of-district tuition placement costs, that generally we've done a very good job over the last 12 years, really, of controlling. Many districts have those costs, and each year they're budget busters. We've avoided that. This year, we have that. So a good portion of that increase, well, 1.5% of that 5%, it's 30% of the 5%, but 1.5% of the total overall increase, is really directly attributable to those costs. So those are really costs that are outside of our control. If you back those costs out, then I think you see a relatively modest budget increase that essentially, has a few small changes in it, but it's in many ways a level service budget. Our budget's been driven by the fact that I think over the last 5 to 6 years we've done a very good job. There's a period there in the 2011, 10, 12, 13 in that range where our budget only went up an average of 1.2% a year over those years. Those years after the financial crisis nationwide caused some challenges to our towns. I think the district was responsive and tried to come in very responsible budgets, allowing the towns during that period the opportunity to get their finances, a little bit more stabilized, and I think that's worked. This year, we are beset by some costs that, as I say, we can't control. And for that reason, I think you see a larger increase. We always look for efficiencies, through our contracts we negotiate. We're saving about $100,000 on our energy costs this year by negotiating, tying up our costs for next year, committed to our costs next year, our contract on our oil and gas. So we're always looking for efficiencies. In past years, we've had efficiencies in our health insurance through some changes we've made. We continue to look at those types of efficiencies all the time. So I think that's pretty much where we stand as we enter the budget discussions. The school committee has not completed the discussions on the budget yet. There's at least 2 more meetings left with the school committee on the budget tomorrow night and March 11th. As you know, by regional agreement, they have to adopt a budget by March 15th, which I'm confident they will do. So, is there anything else you want to add, Lorraine?
No, unless there's specific questions for me, direct questions, and I can answer.
So can you give everyone a sense of the increase, the dollar increase from last year to this year, and the percentage of that on what is in your control relative to what is not in your control? Do you guys have that?
No, I pretty much just what I gave to you verbally now. But I mean, the total.
Because there's certain things that we are here, and there's certain numbers that we know we can't do a thing about, and then there's other numbers that we can. So I guess what I would like to hear a little bit more of is the numbers that you folks can control. What have you done, or what are you working on doing over the course of the next 2 weeks to mitigate that?
Well, I think we do the things we've always done. For example, we have our transportation contract. That's the relatively expensive part of our budget. That was up this year, and we went out to bid, and we found a large, so it was 20% increase in transportation costs. But we had negotiated a contract a couple of years ago that had a guaranteed option of 4% with our current provider. So we were able to exercise that option and maintain that cost. Whereas otherwise they go up quite substantially. So that's we know maybe a problem a couple of years down the road, but right now it's a cost we were able to maintain. It's still a 4% increase. So I think we had foresight in setting that up with the options that we have, and it allowed us to have a no-lose situation. We went out to bid. which we're required to do in the Mass General Law in order to accept an option. In other words, we have to show that the option would be reasonable in the market. Even though you have an option, you can't accept it if it's outside the market. You can't pay more than you have to pay. So we had to go out to bid, so we did that, but it was like a no-lose bid. If we had been able to get a lower contract, we could have taken it and said, thank you for the options. We went out for a 3-year contract, so we could have evaluated against our option years. But we had heard from other districts, and so the due diligence we had done indicated that transportation costs were jumping, which is, to me, a little counterintuitive, given the fact that energy prices have went down. But other districts have seen it. There's a district to the south of us that saw almost a 30% increase in their bus costs in one year based on their bid. So we knew it might be going up, and in fact, our bid showed it was up 18%. So we had to cover it for the 4%, and we were able to take that. Like I say, I think we've done a pretty good job on our energy contracts, locking in now for next year. I'm not sure what other types of things you want me to address.
Well, I guess so. Let's go. Yeah, so let's go a different way. What is it? As you look through the budget, what is it that concerns you? That keeps you up at night? That when you're in a meeting with Mike, you go, Jesus, there's not a chance they're going to be able to swallow this one coming down. And I mean, what is it that what is there that is problematic for you?
Well, frustrating is the special education costs that I discussed. They're out of our control. And it's a huge number we haven't really had to deal with in past years. So that's certainly frustrating. Beyond that, I think there's not a lot of bells and whistles beyond that. We're adding a couple of positions at the high school and a couple of enrollment-based positions, but we're also subtracting some enrollment-based positions where we're indicated. So I wish I could tell you there's a lot there that we could say, well, we don't have to do that this year, but, there's really not.
So obviously one of the biggest pieces of the pie is the payroll, the benefits, all that stuff.
Absolutely, sure. And that's 80% of the budget.
Can you share a little bit with the folks in the room and the people watching? How do you guys go about managing those costs from year to year, knowing that you're dealing with contracts with unions and such, but is there, how often is the review? Is there a continual increase on shared percentage, onto the employee relative to the employer?
Talk about the health insurance?
Whatever the benefit is.
Yeah,
a higher percentage of retirement coming from the employee versus the district, things of that nature.
Yeah, good question. I think overall, we have not negotiated the percentage recently, since I've been here actually, but we compared to many districts, I think we're in a very employer-friendly situation. Our employees pay 30% of their health insurance, so it's a 70-30 split, and our retirees pay 50%. It's a 50-50 split, which, as you know, is the lowest that it can be. I mean, you have to pay at least 50%. So, and on top of that, we made some major changes in our plans a couple of years ago, where we brought the benefit package, the benefit co-pays, that type of thing, made them much higher. So, which saved a decent amount of money in the insurance, and it's actually allowed us to manage our insurance the last couple of years and have pretty good experience. 3 years ago, we shopped our health insurance around and changed carriers for the purposes of saving money. So I think overall, the growth in our health insurance, like everybody else, is frustrating, but I think we've managed it about as well as we can. Frankly, from a, we're not a huge group, we're a 400-person group, not even quite that big actually, it's under that. And, through nobody's fault, just the luck of the numbers, our experience as a group isn't that good, okay? In other words, we have employees that, tend to have, for some reason, bad luck, whatever, our experience is not that good. That's why we left Blue Cross, because we were rated against our own experience and it was killing us. And we joined a larger group, and we joined the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Agency, which is a consortium of towns under the MMA. So we joined them, and we've had a better deal. As you may or may not know, they have a range of increases for various towns that are members, and we tended to be at the higher end of their range again, through our experience. And we do everything. We won their award for wellness programs, so it's not like we're not trying to, engage in wellness ideas and things like that to help our employees. But sometimes, just the luck of the draw, our employees, spouse, kids, whatever, has a major medical problem or a long-term medical problem. On a relatively small group, it drives your experience the wrong way, and that's been something we've had to manage. So given the fact we know our experience on the group is not as good as other groups may be, I think we've done a good job containing those costs too, both in asking people to pay a little bit more and having a fair employer split, and trying to manage the cost changing carriers, like I said, and things like that.
So, if I remember correctly, the number proposed for Bolton is an additional
835.
835.
That's a preliminary number. I want to be clear on that, because what we don't have is, we don't have the governor's budget yet, so we don't know what the local revenues that we put into the district from the state will be. And we also don't know what the minimum local contributions will be. And that impacts it. This is based, just for projection purposes, but we knew everybody would be curious, on last year's minimum local contributions. So when each one comes out with the minimum local contributions, that will change the assessment. But right now, I'll take whoever said that's word for it. I haven't looked it up, I don't have it memorized, but...
6.68%, $835,000. I do have it memorized.
Yep, 835,659 as of right now, but that won't be the assessed number.
Yeah. So, can you also share a little bit of some of the benefits? Is there anything new that the town of Bolton is getting from last year to this year?
I haven't had a chance to go, and
Nothing specific, to the town of Bolton. I don't remember specifically at Sawyer what the change in teachers are. The high school, I say we're trying to add 2 positions at the high school. So there's not a major change. There's not a major change in our product.
So Sawyer got special educator and instructional assistant, special educator for grades 6 through 8 and instructional assistant for kindergarten.
Right.
That's the
Do you have I know it's cost per student,
Sure.
but do you lump all the students together, or do you have a cost per special needs student against a cost per regular ed student?
No, it's one cost.
It's just one cost? So what percentage of the budget is special needs? Do you know, Pam?
Yeah, I can tell you, I don't know off the top of my head, but the special education department total budget, which includes all the district tuitions, is $10,992,000 requested.
Say that again, George.
$10,992,000, so $11 million. It's about 21-22%.
So, can I piggyback off your question? I want to ask it another way. So for a level serviced budget, I'm seeing some initiatives, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you can speak to the technology increases. I saw a new position there, and also some new lease. So I was just kind of, I saw some comparative data with other towns as well. I guess that one stuck out to me. Are there other initiatives and where they?
No, that's a good point. There's a proposed position for an additional person who would be a customer service front-end person for service and repair to our equipment. We've expanded the amount of units we have in the field exponentially over the last few years and have not expanded our staff. So the school committee held a meeting, just a general feedback meeting with our staff about 6 weeks ago, and I think one of the loudest messages that came through was the need to make sure we are up on our technology and that we're able to service and keep technology in working order and make teachers feel that the technology people are responsive. So right now, that's a response to some of that feedback. The initiative, thank you for bringing that up. It's a relatively small dollar initiative, but it's the beginning of a one-to-one initiative where we would give, and this would somewhat followed your question about Bolton, because they have 8th graders there. Everybody in 8th grade would get a Chromebook that they would keep for them theoretically for the next 5 years. So it would be a one-to-one initiative with a Chromebook. We chose a Chromebook because the utility of it's probably a little bit better for 8th grade students than iPads or something like that, and it's less expensive. So that's one.
It's a 5-year lease?
No, it's a 3-year.
3-year, okay.
But the idea would be that we would do it each year, we would hope, in 5
Rotate
years.
them through
Right,
grades.
but they would be paid for after 3 years, but they would have them for 5 years. And the reason we picked 8th grade, there's several different reasons for it. You know, but one of the reasons is simply it's a good life cycle for the machine. You know, at 5 years. So we would want to go a lot longer than that. And it's a grade that, you know, it's utilized a lot now in all the middle schools. Teachers can't really get enough of them, so this would allow us to not only go to a one-to-one initiative with this particular 8th grade class, but also repurpose the ones that we have already in the middle school. We're probably at about a 4-to-1 ratio right now in the middle school. Some of them are actually starting to get old already because they're about 3 years old, and then they're a lot of use. But if we're able to start a one-to-one initiative with these students, then we go from a 4-to-1 to probably closer to a 2-to-1 initiative for our other middle school students. So there's a benefit to the other middle school students too. There's more of these.
So we're going to see more of this in the future?
We certainly would hope so, yes. That would, I mean, that, and as you say in that first presentation, there is some comparison that was done by our technology, digital learning people, as to what other districts do. And we're probably a little bit behind on this, but we've looked at it carefully to try to find a way that's sustainable, makes sense, and our infrastructure can support, and you know, hopefully we can sustain it.
So when you, on a project like that, what's in place on the back end to measure the results?
What do you mean?
The effectiveness, you're gonna give an 8th grader a laptop.
Well,
What
not a
is,
laptop, a Chromebook.
you're gonna give them a piece of equipment.
Yep.
And the objective is to foster a greater student at the end of the time period,
Sure.
correct? How is that gonna get measured?
Well, I mean, it's the way we get measured all the time. You know, what the student success is through an MCAS or any other type of approach. I don't think there's anything specific measure to whether they have a one-to-one tablet as to whether they share a tablet or a Chromebook. But certainly we've seen over the last few years a large demand, both among our teaching staff and among our student interest, you know, to utilize technology in their learning. And, you know, it's just a response to that more than anything else. I mean, it's a modern way of learning. It's the way kids learn and are taught. So
I do think that the digital learning devices will allow us to go into broader areas too. So we're going to be able to hopefully address some of those students who are on the higher end of the academic spectrum, and we may not have a program that really supports their needs, but they're going to be able to have access to that through the Chromebooks. And then there are kids who are going to be able to collaborate more. The kids are already using Google Docs and a lot of those programs, so I think it will help. I think the thing we have to be cognizant of is it going to have any impact on the current system that we have in place? And I think
System meaning what?
meaning the infrastructure.
Bandwidth too. I'm wondering if that was addressed at all in this technology?
Well, I
Yes.
think it was.
Don't know.
We're increasing our bandwidth in this particular budget, virtually for the same price. No major cost change there. And
But is that just now? Because I learned last week, we agreed to cameras, and then I found out that the town just bought themselves an annuity for the rest of the time period that these cameras are in place. So I understand the initial
I don't know why you're
cost.
talking about cameras, I'm sorry.
We got cameras around town for safety.
Okay.
So it was billed to us as, here's a price, but there was not a full understanding of the impact of that over the life. So you guys you're gonna pull the trigger on these laptops, so it's already gonna put added stress on the collective infrastructure. Understandable. And you said it's not gonna drive up any additional costs. Is that right now?
No,
or-
I didn't say that.
Well, on the
You just said
bandwidth.
right now on the
On the bandwidth, it
bandwidth.
will.
But you gotta
But on the other, there are
The
some other
bandwidth
new charges.
doesn't drive the cost up. The cost of the equipment is going to cost more, obviously.
And so every year, the 8th grade class will be given Chromebooks, right?
That would be the
Every
plan,
year. That
yes,
would be great.
yes. And right now, the additional cost for that particular program is, I want to get it exactly right.
Is it 260,000 or something?
No, but it's about 30,000. It's budgeted for $30,000. It might end up coming to
The Chromebooks, the one-to-one.
Right.
Yep, initiative.
Right.
So, and I think it's short money for,
Yeah.
we've got to bring the kids up into the next generation, and it's not going away, and I think
Right.
we're reeling over, a bunch of things in our budgets too, with computers going off warranties
Sure.
and being out of service and stuff. My bigger concern, just want to put this out there for this initiative, is it's a new one. I think it's a valid one, but you've got to measure and if you're going to just go off of measurement, well, you've got a great place to start, because your science, I'm looking at the 2010 to 2014 MCAS percent proficient has gone down from 78 to 72.
Yep.
So get some science programs going on with those laptops and work it so that if that's where we're going to measure the success, which is what I'm hearing you say, if that's the only place, I would expect to see a change there. Do you know what I'm saying?
We certainly would like to see some improvement in those scores. I think science scores are a little difficult to interpret sometimes, just that simply. We agree, and we've been aware of that, and we're trying to address it.
Well, okay. But when you say you're going to address it in a way that we can then measure the results of that. Do you see what I'm saying? You're saying, oh, this doesn't tell the whole story, but you're saying we should be expected to measure the success based on just this. So if there's a bigger story there, give us the results of the bigger story. Because this is a nice, clean slate kind of place to start with this new technology initiative to see a result. Do you see what I'm saying?
I sort of see what you're saying, but not totally. Because I don't think that we can tie it directly to the science MCAS results, okay? Because the science MCAS results are much more...
Or math, or,
Yeah.
but that's what you just said we were going to do. So.
That's one example of how we measure it.
Okay.
When we're introducing a one-on-one initiative, okay? But we're not radically changing the way we teach our kids, okay? It's giving them more access to what we're using now, all right? Therefore, we certainly would expect to see success, but it's not like it's a brand-new program doing something we've never done before.
I think what you're asking
How
is
do we
what is
measure
that
it?
success?
Yeah, how do we,
So that's what
well,
we
it's back to
need
Brad's question. That
Okay, so-
I feel like didn't get
okay.
fully answered there.
So what is success and how are we going to measure it? So I guess that's
To the
something we need to take
Chromebook
back.
initiative, if
So
you
you
will.
think that the Chromebook initiative should be based on some kind of tangible
Outcome
outcome?
rather than
Well, even
a
if
tool?
it's, even if
A
it's.
tool, right.
Yeah. Well, I think that's
disagree. I
what
think
people
it-
are asking
the-
for. It's how
Well,
do you do that?
I'm at school every day, and I'm in computer class a couple of times with kids, and I can see the valid need for Chromebooks on every desk, on every child's desk in the school. And I could see where it
Oh,
would
absolutely.
be
I
a
do too.
boon for them
But it's so easy to
learn.
measure, it's technology. So you can see how many times kids have logged
I don't
on,
think
how
so,
long have
because-
they been on,
because
what
what
do they
they
do?
can
We can
do-
measure the statistics, so
Yeah,
And then it's like a great place to start because you've got so much, because I agree, there's a learners, it's hard to measure that stuff.
So I think, yeah.
There's an
we
initiative
were-
where you have a lot of tools to do so, to
We're
measure.
focusing on Chromebooks as one example, but the discussion, it comes to a greater point of just measurement in general. Unfortunately, I was not able to make this year's round of budget meetings, but I distinctly remember last year, the special ed department, and to your point where you're saying there's frustration there, George, there was this presentation that was talking about the number of kids able to be brought back into district on special ed, but there was also, a marked increase in cost, and there was no correlation there. There was no measurement, and I guess my point is maybe there's it's great to bring the kids back in, but if it increased the budget at a faster rate than what that's going to do, maybe it's best keep the kid out. Tell me where this. Tell me you voiced concern over the special ed budget. To what degree does more special ed help with MCAS scores?
Well, I'm not concerned about it. You asked me what parts are frustrating and what parts I think about it. I said that's a huge increase, okay? I think it's unfortunately, a legitimate increase. These are out-of-district tuitions specifically. These are kids who are in IEPs, who the IEP team has determined need an out-of-district placement. That's what these people are. We don't control all of them. Sometimes we inherit IEPs. If someone moves in from a different town and moves into Bolton or Lancaster, they move in with their placement. We are obligated to pick up that placement. Now, our IEP team eventually can, reconvene and discuss that placement. We can't unilaterally change it, and it has to be a team agreement. And often when those situations are already in place, whether we agree or don't agree, we are often, required virtually to follow it. You can't change it without full agreement at that point. So that's a little oversimplification, but that's mainly the case. There's a lot of appeal rights and that type of thing. So, those are things that we have minimal control over. I think overall, what you were talking about, other programs, we didn't start any new programs last year to bring kids back into the district, okay? I think overall, if we can keep kids in the district, that's what we want to do. We feel it's better for them, it's better for their peers, it's better for the district overall. We can't always do that, because some needs are such that we can't meet them in the school district, okay? That happens, and that's when we have to go out of the district to do that. I think what you were talking about, and maybe the presentation, I don't remember specifically what you're talking about, but the presentation you're talking about, but we have built programs within our district, both at the high school and the middle schools particularly, to bring kids who maybe in the past were serviced outside the district back into the district. Those have been very successful overall, and that's what allowed us really over the last, one of the things that's allowed us over the last 12 years to keep our other district tuition costs level. If you look at our other district tuition costs over that period compared to other districts, you'll see an amazingly level cost. Unfortunately, it caught up with us. There's never a good year for it to catch up with you. No one's going to say, wow, we can afford it this year, okay? It's not going to happen. But it's probably better to happen in this year than 5 years ago.
What about, this is an out of the box, really quick, out of the box. As space needs comes down the pipeline, and I won't go there in full, I promise. But on this vein, if there was going to be a new wing or a new building, a new room, that would be, and Connie, weigh in here because you probably know more about this, like a self-contained room potentially, or a room that allows students who would otherwise be sent out of district with, maybe they all have a certain disability that you see, a trending. You've got, 10 kids with Asperger's, and they're all in, the first three, kindergarten through 3. Maybe there's a specialized program that can fit then in a new building.
That's the whole idea of having the program we have now, is so that they can be not mainstream, but they can be inclusive.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful program in that sense. I don't think that would ever happen. I would think that you would have to just increase the size of the school because of the numbers sake. Right now, we have to do parking first. Otherwise, we can't have any more students coming to school in their car. That's just a sideline thing.
Yeah,
But
no.
that's another
I was
cost for
just
the
trying to
school.
think outside the box. So those are big tuitions you pay out. If there was some way, and maybe it's not self-contained, but maybe there's a certain type of disability that it can be serviced in-house within our district. I don't know.
So
Sorry.
No,
I'm just, I think that would address, when you said, what are you doing to address special ed students?
I was just
going
using it
out?
as one example. And you're right. So it's been a year, unfortunately, but there was. I remember walking away thinking, "Wow, great! The brought back in, save tuition versus out, but expense of the budget from the time taken over now has gone up. That rate of increase relative to, more kids coming in and say, I don't.
So
It's cheaper. All I'm saying is measure it. That's all I'm saying.
Have a kid
It's
stay
definitely
in.
cheaper. Yeah, I mean, we can break that information out. It's definitely
That's cheaper.
Definitely cheaper.
We've been through this.
At
So
the-
that's why I
Yeah, we
floated
have
it.
years
Oh, you
and
did? Okay,
years.
good. No, it's not so out of the box then.
At the last two school board meetings, there was a 50,000 foot view of the budget. Are we going to get down to a lower level where we could see some more details?
Well,
Printed?
all the details are online. I mean, I don't know
Yeah.
which
The details,
what type of
wanna take a
details you're
look?
talking about.
History of
It's all online. It's all-
each group. and that kind
Yeah,
of
it's
thing.
all online, right on the
Stan?
website.
Yeah, I attended the budget workshop along Sasha and Ted. Actually, I was a little surprised, the way it was presented at that meeting, that really wasn't presented necessarily that 1.5% of the 5% is out of your control. It wasn't presented that way, so that's sort of new information now. I guess one thing that I know Lorraine had asked, and I also asked, I think you guys asked, is, where in the existing budget were things looked at where some streamlining could be made? And the answer was that yes, they did do that, but there's no detail. And I think, you asked that question, Lorraine asked the question, and I asked the question, and I think it would be helpful to see some of that, because the school committee as a group didn't receive that kind of information. I do also want to caution that we're not talking about a 5.07% increase in the budget. We're talking about a 7.1% increase in the budget, because the money, the $2.5 million is what the towns have to contribute. The district is kicking in $1 million of E&D money to get to where our contribution is the 5.07 or whatever it is. So from that regard, next year, even if their budget doesn't go up by $1, there's $1 million of the budget that we're not necessarily covering now that we will have to cover next year. So in this budget, there's already baked in, if you just take that $1 million and divide it by 3, each of the 3 towns has a $333,000 liability for next year's budget, even if they don't raise their budget by $1, which that's not going to happen because of obviously contractual issues and coal and all that.
I thought they hardly ever spent anything out of the E&D.
No, they do on a regular basis, but the thing is,
always
that, they're sort of providing a cushion this year, but we're liable for that extra $1 million that's in the budget next year, so that we're already sitting at a, $333,000 bogey for next year, on top of whatever comes. So, I mean, that just.
I think that's a good point, except that, and you're right, and that's very possible. I mean, at the same point, for the last 4 or 5 years, we have been able to spend $1 million a year. So if we're able to do that again next year, which we can't predict now, that won't come into play. But you're absolutely right, it certainly could come into play. Whenever you spend E&D or free cash.
Right, well, but we know that your budget's gonna go up, so someone's gotta cover that $1 million
That's
of
it.
expense the budget's going up. So, I mean, in some sense, we're dealing with like an override. It never goes away, Sometimes we'll fund outside of Prop 2.5, or, we'll do that, which only lasts a few years, but, all this is forever, so just.
Is E&D like the free cash for this district? Okay.
Don?
Just quickly, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I'm always concerned about is sustainability. And for those of you who don't know George's background, George is a former town manager. He was in Framingham, so he's been on both sides of the issues. He's had to manage these things from my side. And in my background, I served 6 grueling years on a school committee, so I know what schools go through. So the observation I'm going to make here, it's not pejorative at all. It's not judgmental on any need or anything like that. The budget that's in front of you right now, not including COLAs for the town employees, right now is in deficit by $516,323, which means we would have to apply that much free cash that fortunately we have to balance our budget, ex COLAs. I just did some very quick modeling with the town accountant this afternoon and used some pretty conservative growth factors for the town side and a 6% growth factor for the school side. And I acknowledge that the school has not done 6% growth every year, so right off the top, I'll say you can chop something off the final number that I'm going to give you if you wish, although I will say, if one of the main drivers is an increase in outplacement for special need, once you have that, you pretty much don't lose it the next year. They seem to stay for a while once you get them. And the district has no visibility to tomorrow. A whole new student could come in. That's another $100,000 expense, and that's out of their control. So if I use a 6% growth factor for education and a very conservative growth factor for the various line items that we have, our $516,000 delta today in FY20 becomes 1.3 million. So I'm just stating the numbers. And if you want to chop 20% off that or 25% off that, it's still a 7-figure number. So, you know, I'm concerned about long-term, as I'm sure the school district is, because if something is not sustainable, it's not sustainable on either end. So, you know, as I always say, I believe in working in concert with the school department. I believe we're colleagues that should be working together. So I'm just sharing those numbers as an observation for everybody to consider.
And Don, I think the numbers you're using is us having to go to the full levy limit.
That assumes the full levy limit.
Which we weren't planning on doing.
What is the budget process? How do you sort out needs and wants and priorities and hurdle rates and you know, when does it start and how does it get to where we are?
Yeah, it starts in October usually, where the various department managers, school principals are given, you know, are asked to build their budget from the bottom, so to speak, not just add on, but, you know, build up from the bottom. I guess we call it a modified zero base, you know, where people decide what they need and make their justifications for it. They're submitted to the superintendent. He meets with all of the departments throughout the school district, and then he puts together, and he takes a lot of things out that are requested, and he puts together a final recommendation which goes to the school committee, usually in the January timeframe. The school committee discusses it over usually a 6 to 8 week period and votes it for the March 15th deadline.
Now, does the budget tie into the goals? The first meeting, there were goals, college acceptance, AP scores, SAT, advanced and proficient, that kind of thing. And is there a narrative that ties these increases to those goals? I haven't found it. I'm looking for it.
I think Michael's presentation attempted to do that, so I don't know if you have a copy of the presentation.
I did, but I didn't get. Maybe I'm a slow learner. I didn't get.
Is that the one from the?
This is from the budget report out.
Ted, you were at the workshop. The presentation George was talking about was the one that was presented at that meeting.
Yeah.
And also the one from the.
I didn't connect
The budget.
SAT scores, AP.
No, there isn't anything in
I mean,
there.
there's not. They're not specifically connected. There's so many goals, you know. But he did in the January 28th meeting. I believe it was January 28th. If I have my dates right.
It was.
Okay.
I was there.
He gave an overview where he did try to tie in the district goals and talk about what the budget initiatives and budget goals were. But again, I know this is frustrating for all of us, and this is probably what frustrates me most, because you know, I realize this is a little bit bigger increase than we've been here in recent years. And I wish I could tell you it's because we have tons of bells and whistles, but I think it's really not. I mean, I don't think we're doing as much as we'd like to do at the high school. I don't think, particularly at the high school, you know, the technology thing is there, but that's relatively inexpensive for the whole budget. So I think that's, you know, one of the frustrating things. Like, you know, maybe we weren't clear enough about it, but because it's more of a numbers thing. But the special ed number is $700,000+ that's driving a lot of it. And beyond that, you know, I'm sure everybody knows this, so you don't need to hear it from me. But you know, education is a human resources business. We're developing human resources, and we do it with human resources, and that's the cost of this budget. If you look at our salaries and benefits, you look at 80% of the budget. So when you talk about programs, or you talk about, you know, things we do and we don't do, it revolves around human resources. So the only way, you know, not the only way, significant cuts reductions in the budget, especially when you're mandated with costs such as other district tuitions, can only come through changes in human resources. It's the only place it is. So there would have to be a decision to do something now. I'm sorry. There would have to be a decision not to do something that we do now. And I'm not, personally, I don't see a lot of those opportunities.
Well, I guess actually, George, that's a good question. I mean, has anyone looked at, the administrative personnel, the non-teaching personnel?
Yep.
Middle management, if you will.
That's also on our website. Yeah.
And whether maybe a position that's there, is it really needed? I think during the budget workshop, there was discussed that you have 10 IT people on staff, 5 assigned to the schools and 5 assigned to the district, and
the ones assigned to the schools are teachers, so.
Well, the way it was,
they do some work on the they do some initial work for minor problems at the school, but they're part of the teaching staff there, and their primary goal is instruction. Our actual central IT department is 5 people. You are correct about that.
Right.
There's 5 teachers, but all 4 of those 5 teachers have a teaching role. The one in the high school does not have a teaching role per se, but everything else does have a teaching role.
But so, and again, I can only relate what we have to do on what you guys are doing.
Yeah,
and there's a lot in this budget that we all don't have any control over. And so, but the first thing that comes to our mind is not the idea of getting rid of a person or a resource. It's looking at some other creative way to go about to keep everything smooth. So, I respectfully disagree with you when you say that the only place that we can go is to reduce someone.
The only place we can significantly change the budget, I don't think I said the only place we can go.
Well, what is the headcount increase?
But the point is, at the time where there is a determination that, hey, we need an additional person, I think that, going back to Stasha's point where the slate is clean, I think there is if you're gonna add someone on to that, I think at that point there's got to be a mechanism that there's some measurement on the benefits of that, so that it can be reported back. And I would think it's only going to strengthen your case when you come back to us or the other towns to say, look what we did, you didn't like it because we increased it, but look what we got for it.
Well, the IT, we certainly have those statistics. I can't give them to you off the top of my head, but we have a very extensive tracking system of how many service calls we have, how long they respond to them, how many people respond to it, the number of calls, things like that. Most of the teaching changes are numbers driven, caseload driven. On class size, that's what they are. We have some reductions and some additions based on class size.
I cross-referenced all that, you're right.
Yeah, the only thing that really is different on that is a couple positions at the high school we are trying to expand programming a little bit, and that we're doing it very minimally,
Oh yeah, no, George, and I'm not, my expectation is you guys are gonna figure out the recipe, but I'm talking about when there is the ad, right? So the 2 people at the high school, is there a mechanism in place on the back end to say, here's what we did? And if the numbers don't work out, then, then there's the axe.
Yep.
Again, I'm working at a deficit because I wasn't able to make the meetings, but I heard something in the paper where there was a discussion of a build out on a school at 150,000 was the number, but it wasn't likely going to be the case because a lot of the work was going to be proposed to be done in-house. So more than likely the number's going to be at 100. So my thought is right there. You're right, significant increases, sure, but we fight, to knock some. We just took one number from 100 down to 10, right? So on that, that's 50 grand.
Yeah, that will be addressed.
All right, great. So stuff like that, right? 50 grand, that's a new cruiser to this town.
That will be addressed.
Can I ask Lorraine?
Yep.
In years past, or in some years past, the school committee, once the budget has come out, they've looked at like this tier 1, 2, 3 types of cuts. Are you folks looking at that again this year, or?
So, at the report out that we had 2 weeks ago, I think the question came up is, do you want us to look at some other options? And frankly, I needed some time to digest what we have. George and Michael and I met with one other school committee member last week and identified certain areas where I thought there might be some opportunity. So I'm hoping when we go in tomorrow that we see another cut at it. And if not, then I've already asked for a specific % reduction. And I'm hoping that I can share that with the school committee, but I'd really prefer to share that with the school committee first.
Sure, that's fine.
But, yeah, I know I'm looking for that, and we've talked about that, and I think there may be 1 or 2 other folks who are looking for it as well.
All right, we're about 15 minutes over, so I want to give, real quick before I let you guys go, I just want to open it up. Anyone else in the audience have any other questions? If not, thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Taking time.
And we'd be happy to come back, when we get through the process over the next couple of weeks.
Beautiful.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Have a nice night.
You do. I didn't ask about it. What? I wanted to ask about it.
We can help you.
That's all right.
What? You would grab the same as?
Okay.
You grab
Yeah,
it, you would
that's
say-
I know, but you look it on my camera instead of no,
Guys, you can come on down.
we'll pick Lorraine up in a second.
Yeah.
Approach the spend. We're gonna wait till we're called.
How are you guys doing?
Well, yourself?
It's been a fun,
I'm sorry, I
yeah.
was gonna say gold, you read my mouth.
Thank you, Lorraine.
I'm about to put my jacket on.
My hands haven't been warm.
Oh, yes.
All right.
You got 2 sheets that...
Yes. Yeah. So you guys, we're working off of these 2 right here. Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
So a relatively light year
Yep.
compared to years past.
Which I don't know if you guys, how much you guys caught the earlier conversation this evening. It's,
A little bit of that.
yeah, it's kind of good that it's a light year. All right, so where do you want to start?
I'm beginning to step through the rank recommendations, if you will.
Yeah, let's, so this page right here.
This page right there.
So let's start with this page right here, guys, the rankings. All right.
Like 3 pages left.
I know, yeah. No, and this year, I mean, everything we did, we approved everything this year. We do have a caveat to the repaving,
Please.
but I guess we'll get to that. So our
Did you
number,
guys wrap this up in one night?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we
They canceled probably.
we
but-
rescheduled our meeting, I think, 3 times, and we were able to get
Yeah.
all the department heads each time, they,
It's great.
yeah.
Pretty good.
It was great. So our top request was the new radios for the fire department. I think they made a good case for replacing their 18-year-old radios, was that what they were?
Yes.
And the extra number of them, we felt was justified based on assigning each firefighter, each volunteer, their own radio. We saw the benefits to that.
Which were?
Mostly that you could identify an individual firefighter by the radio. So if someone were lost or unaccounted for, they would know specifically who it was.
Okay.
They can keep the call.
It's a house fire.
So I'm just gonna float one crazy thing by
Do we
you.
have
If they were even to have that number of radios and have 2 guys assigned to a radio, that wouldn't work because they're both being called on the same call, or?
Yeah, I mean, so I think the way it works right now is not necessarily all of them have a radio, or a lot of people respond directly to a fire and don't go to the station first, so they may not even have a radio when they go. But yeah,
So the benefit of a radio is so that,
But they don't carry it on their person, they have to go to the station before they go
no,
out.
they,
now they do, with the
Now they
exception of some people do have
and so how many firefighters are there?
27.
27? And how many show up per call, all
I think,
27?
no, it varies.
Okay.
What's the max number?
I see, I don't remember that we did went
I
through this.
got that number, how many show up on call? I asked that question.
Yeah, it's
And we have the proverbial one house fire, or what?
Well, this is what, I get it, I totally get it.
Three
I
structure
think they should have them,
fires.
just the number was
The number-
stunning to me.
Yeah, the number,
No,
Where is it?
yeah, I just,
5 to 10 per call. So he had requested, what was it, how many?
27, one spare per vehicle.
27,
The 32.
And, yep, that's right.
32 total, and we have maybe
That's why I
5 to
halved it.
10
One in each truck,
one in each
firefighters.
truck.
and then, two persons on one radio.
What's the useful life of these?
I mean, the last one's lasted 18 years.
But we know they're woefully, they should have been.
Replaced a while ago.
They haven't been any
You
replaced.
said
They're generally
since-
out of service between 7 and 10 years, so they're well out of service as
Okay.
they are right now.
Right.
He said 10 at our last meeting. So,
If each fireman has a radio, does that mean we have to have chargers at their residence or in their car, or? 'Cause I
Yeah.
mean, if they're not,
Part of the same package, I think.
Yeah, so
It's
they
about
are,
a unit that includes the.
part of this includes a charger.
in
but it would be at the station.
car or home, or?
Yeah, I remember the chief saying that they would be at the station.
Right.
Yeah, but then if you don't go to the station and then the fire,
Yeah,
you know, I'm.
my understanding.
Why would you need 32 of
Yeah,
them then?
I'm trying to
Well,
find
one
a
for each
minimum
truck.
adequate.
Well, no, you don't have 32 trucks. You
No,
need
No,
it
one
was
one
for
for each
each truck.
fire truck. and
One
then-
assigned
But I
to
mean,
each
if you're all,
person.
if they're all at the stations, you sure don't need 27 of them if only 10 people
Yep.
are going
So I
for
asked that
fire.
question to him, and he had given me, a preliminary answer, which was, the convenience of having kind of a one-to-one and an accountability one-to-one. And so I was trying to weigh, and I was hoping he would come back with something more on that in terms of a reason to justify the inconvenience of having a 2-to-1. That why couldn't we do that instead? So
Have we ever,
that's where I get stuck.
and not, God forbid it would ever happen, but we've never lost someone, have we?
I don't believe so.
In how many years? Oh. Okay, I'm just trying to get history.
Well, right, but I don't think this is gonna make a difference on that, like.
1830 something,
I'm
makes a difference to
suspicious.
me.
I mean, superstitious, so
It's a
let
question.
me friggin' knock the one out. See, I play baseball, right? That's
I get it, I get it. I'm learning new things every day.
So I think the question of whether they can get away with a reduced number,
That would be what I would come back, again, and
Like
I'm
half?
sad to do it again.
I mean,
Maybe
they're.
16
The
anyway.
existing count is 14, so that's what they're making do with right now. So,
Sounds
And
good to
the
me.
problem with the 14 has been what? That he wants 27. Is it for the accountability?
Yeah, it's the one-to-one mapping.
And are we sure that they're going to be at the radios at the station? We're not sure.
I think we.
He said they were,
There'll be, every fireman will have them at their home. 'Cause
Did
You
he
thought
say
he
that?
said, you thought he said.
I got a different answer at the meeting. That's
Yeah.
what- So there's like a clarification
All right.
sheet right there.
Can we clarify, that makes a big difference.
I'm pretty positive that
No.
and that's how they would be contacted, and they would,
I thought
they'd
that
be
was-
contacted in
I
case
thought
of
that's what
fire
you said.
through the radio,
right.
whereas today it's cell
So
phone or.
clearly there's,
No, they have like a pager, and then they get paged, and then they call in.
we'll
That's what I
figure it
thought.
out, because
Yeah,
we've got two people
Yeah.
thinking
Yes.
it's at home,
And we can't design
I
it.
thought it was at the station, just like
Thank
you.
you, okay.
So we'll
I
get
think,
that.
yes,
I'd
we
like
need the
to know
radios.
Yeah, I think we need the radios.
I just don't know how
It is the
many.
number, right?
Exactly, and I think the 14, I would like to know what the original number was, because if I remember correctly, I believe they've been losing.
They've broken over the
Right,
years.
so
Yeah,
they're
reduced.
down to
It's
14.
they're 14 are now in service, I can
Yep.
give you that. They're 17 years old. He's requesting 32, 27 for each firefighter, 5 for each fire truck.
Yeah.
How many?
32
Well, 5
total.
fire trucks.
One for each of
One for
five.
Yeah, right.
And 5 to 10 guys go on a call. So you see where the discrepancies were? I got a little stuck on that.
And right now they use pagers or cell phones or what?
Well, they're using technology that is just so not even, it's not dependable. And then the other advantage, if I remember correctly, is this allows for, like,
Cross-town communication.
Exactly.
mutual aid.
They can get tied in with other organizations.
What are they
The
doing
police
now?
department.
How do they get tied in now? I mean,
They're
I'm
not.
missing that.
They're not.
Well, how do they get other,
They show up at the fire and shout at each other.
no, I was,
Good questions to get into.
no, I was wondering, the other fire trucks, when we get them from other towns, we must call them by phone?
Actually, that was something these radios were going to address, was they
Yes.
have different
They support
they're
what
so
changed.
old, the current ones, that they don't have the same frequencies as when they get other,
So
out
the
of
responding
town.
time would be quicker
Yes.
than if they used a
So I think what they have to do
switchboard or
is,
communication would be
phone or-
I think
better
they have
on
to
site.
go back to I think they have to call back to the center, and then
Dispatch.
the dispatch then calls it down, so they can cut that out and go directly. The conversation on the existing radios, it was clear that they needed new radios.
Yeah, but my question is how many?
Exactly, I think we've all.
Now, these radios are used to it at the scene of the fire.
That's right.
Now, are they functional inside a self-contained breathing apparatus, scuba mask?
I don't know if they have.
You're breathing oxygen, or do you have a microphone inside that?
The lapel microphone, I don't know if that's that. I don't think so. So
His
I-
justification is mostly just fire, like house fire.
Yeah.
Right, so they'll have
I mean, if
a
you're going into
microphone,
a
it is part
building,
of this.
You have
Yeah,
your
it's included as one of the line items.
self-contained breathing apparatus.
Right.
And-
Yeah, I don't know if those have their own radios built into them or not.
If we're gonna buy them for that, then you don't need don't need two of them. Because they do make them with self-contained radios.
So we just replaced, I don't know if it was the whole thing or just the tanks that we replaced a couple of years
I
back.
thought we did breathing apparatus and everything.
Yeah. I don't know if it included microphones or not, or if it has some
No,
way
I don't
of
think so.
communicating.
He wouldn't be asking for that many then, if it did.
You also get called out head in the line, it's got it line by line in here. The charger, the programming, the case, the spare battery, a lapel microphone. Would that be it?
That, I think, is the...
Oh, that's here, okay, got it.
Any other questions on radios?
Oh, yeah, here, 30.
So how do we move forward with that one? Do you guys go back? I don't want to step on your toes, but I already asked the question once.
I mean, so the question is, could they
Could they-
get by with half that number? I mean, the answer is yes, because that's what they're doing today, right? It's I guess, a question
Maybe a
of,
personal conversation. I don't want to not let John respond to it, you know? I floated it with the hope that he was gonna come back with it.
No,
Maybe not through you guys, maybe we
Yeah,
should just
no,
talk
I mean,
to
it's-
him.
I think if we were to wait,
Oh, so this
I
number includes a 10% increase in the price?
I'm the liaison.
The 45?
Oh, that's right, you
Well, it
were.
allows for that because the
Okay,
base
follow.
estimates based on the, from older,
and I think
they're
the-
anticipating that when it goes to actual bid, it could be more, but they put a contingency for being
I can't remember what we did.
Yeah.
That was,
I do want to
Was
say.
the total amount gonna come from that? Was any of the breathing apparatus, are we talking about using funds from another?
no, that was an
Oh, okay.
older request from years ago. I guess what I'm saying is we funded a different request years ago, and I think we might have spread it out.
Over 2 fiscal years?
So, I mean, if that's a question that we could do here. If we do,
And if it's
16 and
dysfunctional at
16
this
or-
many,
yeah, I mean,
then
but-
we do the rest next year.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
so, I mean, I think they'd probably be, I think they're happy just to get new radios, and
Yeah.
they might be okay with that.
Yeah,
That'd be
I'll,
great.
I'll follow up with the chief and get some more clarity on where the radios will be and a little better understanding of, you know, I remember asking that same question of how many people generally show up and, you know,
Well, and out of respect for him, because you put the request together, I really like your idea of, you know, you can say, hey, let's try this with this many this year, and if it's a nightmare, come back and tell us about it and reconsider another, you know, I know it's on an economies of scale thing, but for that kind of a savings for this year would be helpful.
Okay.
Cool.
Design it here.
what's that, guys?
No, we were just wondering what the range was,
That's okay.
so.
Any other questions on radios? I'll call the chief and get a little greater clarity on that. All right, so next
Ask him
up.
what the range is too.
Oh,
Just so you know, like I'm,
Well, it's one thing if the range is at the fire, you know, from a truck to a person,
Yeah.
or is it from the station to somebody that lives up on Harvard Road?
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it's across town.
I can't, you
I
know,
mean,
it's crossed out.
I think it's into the other towns.
really.
Yeah.
pretty far,
Wow. So I can get my short way down.
probably.
Yeah.
all right.
So number 2, truck and plow repairs.
Yeah.
So 40,000. So we didn't get a chance to meet with Harold. He was sick the night. So we met with Shelley. She said that the money that we allocated last year for truck and plow repairs was well spent and was able to do good on a number of their trucks.
Yeah.
We finally got a little bit of insight into their fleet. She was supposed to give me a final list. But at the meeting, they had 4 one-ton trucks, 6 plow sanders, 2 loaders, a tractor, and a backhoe. And the sanders, which is what most of this money is going towards, were of years 96, 2001, 2002, 2003, and 2001, and there's one missing out of that. So it's a very old fleet.
It is,
Yeah.
it is.
And then they don't have another sander coming up until FY18, which is another thing we can talk about, but in general, you know, Shelley said that the money made a difference and helped them to stretch that fleet longer.
Yeah. Yeah, when he was here, I did ask, I took the opportunity to ask while he was here, because I didn't want, I knew he was going to be meeting with you, I didn't know he was sick, but I didn't want to have him come back to strictly talk about, you know, this stuff on it. So I asked him about the rationale, and he echoed what Shelley said, which was the money was well spent, that yeah, the fleet was older, but given the makeup of those trucks relative to new, he was more inclined to spend money to fix and upgrade and keep these things going versus, you know, and treat that as the money spent versus, you know, putting the town on a new plow,
Yeah.
sander with a bill, an annual bill, and then the concern, that, and just the concern of they're so automated and you know, electrical that the proverbial, that they don't make them like they used to. So that was his rationale for asking for, money for repairs on aging fleet.
Well, and last year he had talked to us a little bit about, Harold had talked to us about moving towards more of a leasing or even an outsourcing model for plowing. And so that was something we kind of wanted to discuss with him a little bit more and discuss with you guys about something that, I know we have people, a couple guys who couldn't be here tonight are interested in working with Harold and Charlie to understand kind of the pricing of that. And this should be an interesting winter to see what, to see what, because I think we do have a fair number of contractors here, so it'll be interesting to see, what kind of the price breakdown was about how much we're spending in town.
So you've got some guys that are gonna work with Shelley to try and get some numbers behind all that stuff.
That are willing to do that, so that's something we can kind of take up and examine. So like I said, we don't have another plow coming up for 2 years, so that gives us kind of time to look into this and see what makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the other members, Bill Bergen, had spent some time looking at some fleet management software for town, and found a pretty reasonable software program that I think was anywhere from $100 to $1,000, depending on how you licensed it. That allowed you to have maintenance records of your truck and photos and who drives it. And gave us a quick little demo, but it was interesting, and it's something that we have zero visibility into the DPW fleet. I mean, fire and police tend to do good about keeping us appraised of mileage and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't know what mileage, what's good mileage on a sander. Does it go for
depends on the year,
100,000 miles? Does it go for 300,000?
how much idles, right?
It's also, you bring up a good point, right? Because the police chief is constantly talking about mileage doesn't mean a thing, it's hours.
Yes. Right.
So, let's look at a fleet management based upon hours, and I could care less about mileage, right?
Right.
But I agree. The concern that I have with the software is when's the upgrade come? And we've bought into it, and now it's time for the upgrade.
Yeah.
It's for this department, and then we've got to do it for this department.
It needs to be townwide. Yeah.
And I'm not looking to. I completely agree. I think there needs to be more metrics on all of this, because I think it's simply it would arm each relative department to have a stronger case to say, I need this piece of equipment, but at the same time, I'm not looking to add staff, right?
Well, and I think that's
or hours to
the cost of this was what made it intriguing
But
to
it
us.
would be nice to know how long a truck is out of service because of maintenance and what type of maintenance and how often on that particular truck.
Yeah.
Sometimes Brownie does all these things himself. He robs Peter to pay Paul. So that might be a little hard to keep track of something like that, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's just, and everything's gonna be different. Obviously, a fire truck, right? The number of times it goes out the door versus a police cruiser
Or a plow.
or
I
a
would think
plow.
would have more wear and tear than most.
Yeah, so this amount of money has been dumped into this vehicle. At what point do you just say,
Right. And especially with DPW, we find it hard to come in and, when he makes a request for a new truck or this and that, it's tough for us to say, you don't need that.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have data for it. So,
We don't know either.
So, I mean, it would be useful, I think, from a town perspective to have that insight into it.
Do we have a work order system or a purchase order system when we spend money either in-house or at a truck place that work order blows the costs back and we can have it come into a spreadsheet and, then we got to capture mileage and we need the mileage, the cost, and basically does it fall on the category of standard maintenance or special cause type
So
stuff.
who keeps track of that?
Yeah, I
mean,
think they only have
If we can
receipts
extend
that they
the
can show.
existing system and make it.
File cabinets, right?
I mean, they have line items in budgets for repairs and stuff, so
I mean, we're not New York City.
track somewhere.
She's great, I asked that
Software
question,
that-
and,
You know,
she said it's all
we
files.
looked
It's
at
just
it
putting
at
together.
Bus to be able to capture
People
that.
the spreadsheet that Bob had put together, and while it has the right spirit,
That's not
its
a lot.
usability is, you know, if we gave that to Brownie and said, hey, could you fill this out, like, we just don't see that happening.
It's gotta be for.
Which Shelley do? I mean, is the end user of the software then would be each department?
It was, yeah, so I think you could set it up so you have multiple users, so Shelley and
Input data.
Chief Menzer and Alfano and all, everyone can input stuff for their own. Again, this was one piece of software done from minimal searching around. And this is something that, you know, if we wanted to move forward with it, we should talk to Don Lowe and understand from a town perspective.
Yeah, and I think you guys should, because it just seems to me that it gets harder and harder to find money on this side, and then when you, in a given year like this, when you get, you know, faced with, you know, what exactly is going to happen with the school, and to, you know, Dawn went through a projection, an estimate, and, you know, by 2020, I mean, the numbers look tough. So again, I feel as though that we need to, you know, you never want to add on another cost.
Sure.
Of, oh, it's going to be $1,000, and then, but if it's going to ultimately allow for a better understanding of this entire process, I think it could be helpful. So I think you should, I think you guys should definitely talk to Dawn and see how would the process go. So maybe, you know, this thing becomes a spend or a warrant article for, you know, next year.
Yeah.
Did Shelley or Harold say anything about it to you? They'd like something like that, or a need?
Yeah, you know, I said to Shelley that we don't have a lot of insight into what their fleet is, and furthermore, what the condition of it is. You know, it's hard to, even just having the numbers and the years, it doesn't mean anything. You know, we know that Harold has the right mindset where he's trying to repair what he's got, and that, you know, so that's good for us.
Is received.
I think inevitably it would hopefully help him too to see, you know, he's got so much going on
I don't know, I think he knows.
to,
I think he knows exactly when to retire a truck, how much use it's had, is it on its last leg, how many years more can he get out of it? I think he does pretty well with that. And I think that's probably why he doesn't keep it tried, because he's had so much experience with this. It's so hard for him, but for us, we have no clue, so.
Well, I mean, he's clearly, I mean, he is, to me, he's demonstrated that he is working to try and save. I mean, when we were having a conversation with him around the landfill, not the landfill, the transfer station, and, you know, we went with some leased containers last year, and, you know, they're gonna look into a compactor for the cardboard section, right? Because cardboard, no matter how many times they're going in and crushing the cardboard, right? It's essentially a money loser. That if it was more compacted in that container when it gets taken away, it could at least be a push, or the town might actually make a little bit of money. So, you know, he brought that up, and we're like, yeah, go look at it, figure it out. You know, so I think he has.
It's more cost effective to do.
Yeah.
well, then we talked about three-phase electric, and I was like, oh my God.
All right.
So number 3.
The culverts.
So number 3 and number 4 were culverts. Again, as culverts have come up over the years,
We've done a few.
done several. Yeah.
But just so everyone's clear, because this one escaped me at first, this is not the actual cost of the culvert, this is the engineering to look at.
Straight up engineering work. Not just to look at it, but to design what the new.
Well, I should
what the
hope
fix
so,
were.
at 25 and 35.
Yeah.
It should be halfway built for those numbers.
50
But-
hours.
Well, these were full, like Sampson Road, this is a full dig down, rip it up,
Yeah,
put in
okay.
a new concrete culvert. So these were full rip outs.
So,
Why couldn't they
can't
be
we just
engineered
go-
for like 5 or 10 grand? Like, I don't get the number.
I don't understand why, if you know it has to be totally removed, why can't you just get bids out to totally remove it and replace it with a company that knows what they're doing, no? That's not how we do things?
So,
I-
there's
We're
two.
doing the design
You
as
talked to
well
them
as
about the
fucking
actual,
the whole process.
each
You know,
one of them, and the nuances of
Start.
each
It has
one.
to be planned, it has
That
to be.
would
Not exactly.
What's
Oh, because
involved.
that's what I was saying. So, you know, I
The
had, I can,
design from a particular company?
The previous years, he's done them in a totality, so you didn't have that visibility as if it were in two pieces, but the process is always by design, design build, the spec, to put it out to bid, and then it's the build is built separately. He's just broken them into two pieces. He's anticipating in the out year the build itself, the physical build, and the work.
Connie, I can answer that question. Go on.
So Connie, Stasha's getting you.
So here we go.
whatever.
On the Wilder Road culvert,
Berlin is 10,000.
so there's two, the 25, the lesser of the two. That's a historic culvert that has stone retaining walls. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It's got stone retaining walls. The sides need to be replaced with some type of new structure. It's a 15-foot sides with like an additional drop. It's a tricky place. And the road above it, the whole thing is definitely cracking.
I get that, but my analogy would be if I wanted to put a swimming pool in my yard, I go to a company and I say, this is the swimming pool I want, come put it in. So they give me a total cost.
So let me
And so
go.
I was thinking that's maybe how they did culverts. I need a new culvert, I go to the company or whatever that puts them in, and they know what they're
So in the case of the $35,000 one, it's totally flooded, so they actually have to pay somebody to go underneath it in the water to look at what's there, and block off and dam off to get, to reduce the water, to
Right.
get in and see what's there. I asked that, because I was
We were
walking
just
in
talking,
there.
that's what we were just saying here, why is one more than the other?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's an added cost to, and I don't understand all the nuances of the engineering, and you guys will be all over that, but that was, when I started begging the questions, it was like, oh yeah, there's a lot to this. You've got to like push back dams and have a guy in scuba gear go under there, and
And, part of that cost was to help bid out, so write up the project and then help to bid it out to.
And might that same, so you mentioned my design build, would that potentially the person who is engineering this?
No. I asked that question.
Because then the number could just float right
Yeah,
into
that's what I
the...
was thinking.
Well,
Pretty much
yeah.
where I was going with that. Whole-
Better to keep it separate.
Like a bundle?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, because then
Doesn't work that way.
then the cost of the culvert
Might be
gets
less.
35,000 less.
But they also may bump up the price of
Material,
what the build is
or
gonna be.
labor.
Yeah, they could
Because-
build the lily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Those are some healthy numbers for engineering. I agree, just make a big hole, and put something in there that nothing's gonna freaking collapse.
I mean, did you see, you must have seen the Sampson Road.
Oh,
It was,
it was intense.
yeah, right.
Sure,
Yeah,
but,
that was-
I mean, I'm still trying to
We did the
understand.
same thing in Florida. I don't even remember.
Yeah,
Did we
this
do
is
the
my problem.
engineering with-
I don't remember that. I don't know, but let's
I just thought there
let's
was
just say we
some
did.
money and we,
I was
For
here
what
the-
was done
do,
to
but not the
Sampson, it was
engineering.
huge, right? It was
Did we-
rather impressive, but for the life of me, I don't know how possibly that, if there was an engineering study,
I don't remember.
why it
We
would,
certainly didn't fund it separately.
yeah, I just can't imagine
Do you remember?
If
Were you?
I was here, we didn't fund a separate study. I remember funding the culvert
Yeah.
itself, but we didn't fund a separate engineering study, no.
So why do we do that now?
Well,
Suppose it is
I could
really
offer up
impressive.
maybe, it's because it's gonna take a year to do the study, and he doesn't wanna utilize the tax dollars, that, he doesn't wanna hold
I'm
on
not
to the
talking
full
about
amount.
doing the study. I'm saying, why do the study? We didn't do it with the Sampson.
I'm sure we did
We
do a
did?
study of
Okay.
some sort. And the Sampson Road did happen the year after we allocated the dollars, so it didn't,
Yeah, happened right.
it didn't happen right away.
It's just a guess, I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, no, that's probably why we don't remember. 2 separate years.
Alright.
Culverts.
Culverts.
So number 5, DPW expansion.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Bridge.
48,000, and I kind of in the right up here, and we feel if they can get more use out of that existing structure, for a few years, they had a $3 million
Yeah.
placeholder in their 5-year plan.
Yeah, I noticed that's absent.
Yes. So this,
Gee, how much is it's a joke, the old town house.
So this 48,000 would do what?
do you have the square footage numbers, Mike?
And it puts it's not contiguous build either, he's putting additions on both ends. One's for a more enclosed office on one end, the end closest to 117. On the other end, he's going to do more of a crew area and a small breakout room in total out there. And
Doesn't seem like.
it's about a couple hundred square feet in the project.
I was gonna say probably in that
So it's basically just the shell that they're doing, and then they're gonna do electrical and plumbing work themselves. It sounded like to keep the cost down.
much. Yeah, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah, no,
Addition.
it's very cheap for.
Very cheap.
And again, if it kind of keeps them content with that space and not coming asking for new space for something that's
Right.
helpful.
Okay. And that would, assuming they were given the money, they would start that
So they had
potentially in the next year.
Yeah, they have blueprints. I mean, it's a corrugated steel building. And there's probably not a lot of complexity to doing that work, I guess. But yeah, they seem like they were ready to go with that one.
That's planning.
Okay.
So the last one on our list was the Mechanic Street repaving. So, a couple things. So first off, when I drove down, I mean, I've been down the road a few times, and I know that at least the speed bumps are in rough shape. It's tough to get a good feel, or it was tough when I went down, because it was packed with snow, so you couldn't really tell the condition of the road. I'm sure it is in bad shape. It probably does need to get repaved. The number was based on a project Bill had done the previous year in Stowe. And so the number I'm not sure of to start with, because oil prices dropped so much over the last year, and paving ties in greatly to the cost of the oil. We also asked that he talk with Harold, and as of, I pinged Bill yesterday or the day before, he still hadn't had a chance to meet with him.
Yeah, because I think Bill, when we redid 117, used some kind of crushed, do you remember what it was? It was, instead of repaving the
Harold dug up and repaved it in place. He had there's a special machine that did that.
right.
I think you need to have a bigger space than what he's talking about paving here. But the question is,
The
Harold
material that he used is what I'm talking.
basically recycled,
Yeah, that's what
it's
it
called
was.
recycled hot top or
Isn't that
something like
what-
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it just recycled the road and mixed in some new
So
asphalt to it. Could they do that? Maybe. This isn't, I don't think
That'll
this
drive the price in?
this isn't a total rebuild of it.
Okay.
But the point was that Bill should work with Harold. Harold's our DPW guy and has a lot of experience on paving and so we don't know how accurate the number is, basically. The need is probably there. I'm sure it's full of potholes like everywhere else. Bill did say this could wait for a year, so when I pushed him, this could wait.
Okay.
You know, not that we were being freewheeling or anything this year, but it was such a low spend year. And next year jumps up a lot.
Yeah.
So if there's stuff that needs to be done, we should do it this year. Was kind of how we approached things. You know, and we even talked with Shelley about pulling in a couple of their requests from next year into this year.
Yeah.
You know, so the three things. Unfortunately, I think Shelley was on vacation this last week, so she didn't get back to me with a couple questions. So the replacement of town hall columns and Emerson columns. She did say that they could pull those into this year if need be. And there was another culvert repair, Sugar Road, which I believe was a slip line.
Right.
So a smaller project. So that one I didn't get it. That was one she didn't get back to me on, the Sugar Road one. But they're really doing. I mean, they aren't doing projects this year. The culvert work is engineering work being done by an outside firm. So if the DPW is looking for projects to do, maybe pull in the Sugar Road culvert.
Yeah.
Now, this is all before, we heard the school committee news, so maybe you have no appetite for that.
On the Mechanic Street, is the drainage proper so that a new surface is going to last the right amount of time?
Is the base
Yeah.
proper? So that was
because the secret for roads lasting is drainage, and if that's deficient, then we're replacing the roads.
well, and that also does. I mean, that road goes right by fenced-off wetlands area right there. So I'm not sure.
I can't imagine draining.
No, I just don't want to spend bad money in 5 years from now.
No, I agree, but the drainage, to Mike's point, it's gonna, then you gotta worry about wetlands and little
Just
salmon.
normal, I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
not designing here, but you need to make sure that you're not gonna touch it again for
So
the right
yeah.
amount of time.
So
I don't know what that is.
all the more reason we wanted him to work with Harold on it.
Yeah.
I mean, Harold's our guy on this, and let's at least have the conversation and understand if that money's accurate. Maybe Harold's doing other paving, and he's like, catch someone a contract on giving us a break on this one.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
Yeah.
Bill has some pictures of the damage posted on this. It's a little hard to see here, because I had to get it on the page. Yes, it's very hard to look at it because it's spread over a lot of pages.
Yeah.
But you can see the speed bumps and some cracks on the pavement.
So do you guys have a sense, so, my biggest concern about the paving, and I go across that road enough, I guess the biggest concern that I have with this paving is it has shown up this year, and it wasn't anywhere in the past. And to me, and I can appreciate, and I know things can come up unexpected that require a big capital spend. To me, a paving job is not one of them, that you can start to see deterioration and it just, over time gets worse. And that's concerning to me because, we asked for a 5-year, you guys worked to do it, right? And the idea is we want to get an understanding of the pipeline to try and figure out, our expectation is you guys are working with the departments to try and smooth it out to exactly the conversation that you had, Mike, right? Of, hey, it's a light year and knowing as much as you know, does it make sense to, kind of pull things in to this year, right? And the columns are a good example. Because I know the columns were, and either they were scheduled for this year, or and I know one of them was at least scheduled even, I want to say
on the list for a long time.
12 or 13, right? So then that says to me, well, what degree of how good is the data if they were originally on the 5-year back in FY13, they got pushed again, and now they're slated for 17. So I just wish that there was greater confidence, right, in this.
So I guess I'd say two things. He did say to us why it came up. I don't know. Someone brought it up to me. I can't remember right now. My memory doesn't work anymore. But the other one was I think paving is one of those things that you can be going along, and then in a year it just starts getting bad with frost heaves and cold winter and that. So I don't know. I mean, I've certainly noticed that the speed bumps have gotten smaller and smaller, and sections that I can just drive through over the past year or so. So yeah, I mean, why wasn't it on his radar? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know?
So he, on this, he had a couple of different, I liked his team approach of how to potentially, did you see this?
No, we didn't get that.
Oh,
Yeah.
so, you know what? I wanted to just read this, so that everybody can know. It says, an alternative to this cost would be to delay the project by a year or two and move forward with a patch over for the most significantly deteriorated areas. Which I was appreciative of that, and it gives a couple, costs and different options there, based on obviously what's going on with the budget, to potentially do, some patching and maybe fix. I know the speed bump you're talking about. It makes me nervous because people fly through there because there is no speed bump. So, I can definitely see the justification for some of the safety features that road no longer has. But the full 80 was.
The road is not long enough to fly through there.
It's speedy turning.
So I beg to differ, but I don't want to tell you why. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I have delayed a time or two to pick up my kids. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I think kudos to Bill for presenting a couple different options, and if push comes to shove, there's a couple different options there.
And so we did, so we asked him about, that was the whole, yes, this could be delayed. He gave us the $15,000 number.
You delay it 2 years with that second option, it costs you an extra 12 grand now.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that that oil and paving do correlate a lot. I mean, oil's cheap, so if we can get a good deal on it now, and there's paving work to do, this is the time to do it.
Right.
So I mean, that one, we do feel that we need to hear back from, get Harold's take on that. Right. And I know other groups have even just asked Harold to submit their bids for them because he can speak better to them. And Bill talked a little bit about that, how, that was one. The only reason I think he went forward with this because he had done the work in Stowe the year before, but I don't know if the price he got was good or what it was based on.
And he did work with the Stowe DPW when he did that one.
He did, You're exactly right.
Yeah, and so I think we were trying to get Mr. Cleary in here, but there was some conflict with scheduling, and so I think that's why he provided this. So with that news of him not coming in, if you guys could try and get some greater clarity on that. And
so he was supposed to get back to me by today. He hadn't as of yesterday. I'll ping him again after this.
All right. Anything else for these guys?
So, when we talked about pulling in other
Such a good
projects, so that was just would this be ready to do, and we haven't investigated any of these as to whether we would, like the town hall columns, we haven't investigated whether we'd recommend any of those yet. We just asked Shelley if these were to come forward. Yep. Could you do it?
Yeah, that was.
I'm getting nervous on this, but I hold off at this point.
Yeah,
that's just me. You go.
No. It was.
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. I was looking at 2017.
Yeah.
Replace 8 boilers, and I'm going, whoa.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was. I was speaking with Don, and I asked that question on
about
the stuff. Exactly.
Yep.
And so I wanted to hear what you guys had to say. But yeah, I mean, I definitely don't like the idea of accelerating stuff just to spend money by any stretch of the imagination, but I am concerned on what the number is, but then again, I probably shouldn't be, because it's almost as if this 5-year plan doesn't mean that much, because it changes so much, right? Which is really unfortunate. Like, I really wish there could be a more consistent, and then as you guys are trying to, get an understanding of what exactly it is, and then the stack ranking, then you also have the opportunity to try and, help the town to smooth the line out. But you guys are at just as much of a disadvantage as everyone else, because we don't.
Well, I mean, so to be fair, I mean, DPW year over year tends to give us the same. The requests are always there in the 3 to 4 year scope. They shift around a lot. So sometimes he'll pull a culvert in one year that was scheduled for next year. I mean, those all change. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would call it inconsistency or just better. A lot of times we ask the departments, hey, give us whatever you think might be coming up in the next 5 years. And so as a brain dump, they just think, no, maybe this is here, maybe this is there.
Yeah, but I guess...
And then they tweak it as they get closer.
Yeah.
So.
Which is fine, but I just wish there wasn't the initial brain dump. I wish there was actually, an inventory of everything that they touch, and some thought on, wow, what is the useful life of that product, and where are we, and we should put this in. And I mean, there's a 5-year plan here, absent 2 years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think that should be the case.
I think one of the things that strikes you when you go through this that's particularly frustrating is I don't see a lot of things coming where it's at nearing the end of useful life. A lot of the things are beyond their useful life. The columns that have already been repaired by concrete blocks, and so you're just plain running out of original column. The ratio of concrete to original column has just gotten to a point it's not sustainable. I mean, it's not a lot of scenarios here where we're at the 9th year of a 10-year useful life. It's more like we're at the 15th year of a 10-year useful life.
Yeah.
So I think
that's probably
challenge the ranking process itself.
Like you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think that's part of the other frustration that I have is, a lot of times when the stuff is here, it stays right up in this category of it's an immediate need, and knowing that, and knowing what the various town departments have had to deal with, and knowing full well that a lot of what we have, we don't have control over, i.e. the school budget and how that impacts us.
Well, I mean,
and I would like the ability to have a better. It's my beef. It's the same one that I have every single year. It's what I had when I was on that. I just wish there could be
We had a lot
better
of free cash also that we were able to apply to a lot of the things you had on capital planning on your list last year.
But to the
And the year
point,
before.
yeah, but I mean, to the point of someone budgeting for an asset that, okay, this truck is 10 years old and it's going to reach the end of its useful life at 10 years. Just because it's there doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go ahead and replace it. I don't know if you just want to see it on the budget so we can kind of kick it down the road a year or two, but...
yeah, I would like, I think it just speaks to, going back to our other conversation of fleet management, right? It's one other piece of information that we're able to see, okay, we've got an analysis of the fleet and what's going on internally, and then where are we looking? And I agree, I'm not looking to add stuff here just so we can go out and buy stuff, but to get a sense of collectively the pipeline for the town.
So, yeah, I mean, one thing that we can do is I think everyone always scrambles to get their budgets in the November, December timeframe. And so one thing that we can do this year, because, and I was noticing this myself as we went through this, is that, yeah, there's nothing for 19, 20, 21 on there. So we can re-meet with some of the departments with a specific goal of saying, let's work on the 5-year plan, and let's let's put down on paper everything. What are your current capital assets? What do you envision in the next few years it's gonna come due? So we can try to, get that better, rather than having them do it at crunch time when everyone's really trying to fill out and justify their current fiscal year.
And maybe some of these things will push out too.
Okay, yeah, they certainly could.
Yeah, that would be great. It definitely would. I mean, I think we were even having this conversation last year, like a piece of hose on a fire truck, right? I mean, what is a 100-foot section of hose cost? What's the inventory of that? When were they last bought? How long do they last for? And again, I'm not advocating going out to buy stuff to spend money, but it would be nice to get to the point where we're not going to the well of, wow, this is really beyond its useful life on everything, and just getting a better sense of what the town is facing.
I'm gonna agree on big ticket items on that, but the hose, I feel like we were micromanaging at that point. You know what I mean? Like big,
yes,
columns and buildings and trucks and things like that. Yes.
But what does a section of hose cost? Who knows, right? But
That might fall in his budget,
exactly. It might fall within the budget, but if there's, I'm just using it as an example.
Okay.
Strictly using it as an example, but there should be an understanding of every budget of what the capital items are and where they are in terms of useful
Yep.
life.
I can take an ash hand to find out the cost of hoses.
An example, Dave.
Yeah, I think for this year, we should definitely not try to move anything forward. I mean, we're dealing with an immense school increase, and hopefully it won't be that bad next year.
OPEB.
We're also dealing with this OPEB thing, which is a one-time huge change, and next year it'll probably just be the same number or a slightly higher number. So I think this is a really bad year to pull things forward. Second, I think you should even consider bans for everything but the engineering, because I don't think there's anyone in town who has a cost of capital that's less than 1%, and we can do bans for less than 1% now. So I think it's nearly free money, and we might as well extend the payment time on these things and help us. I think it would knock $100,000 off the amount we had to raise in taxes if we used bans for those things. Finally, I disagree with the tenor of the whole conversation you've been having here. I don't think we should want to smooth things out because you set the base higher when you do something sooner than you need to, and new things keep coming in there. And I think we'd spend the least amount of money if we just did things when they really, really had to be done. And there was a famous study in the British Underground where there's all this stuff about preventive maintenance and so forth and so on. And they found the really cheapest way to maintain the underground was when something broke, you fixed it. So as long as that escalator kept running, some of them would break after 3 years and some would keep running for 30 years. And now I'm not advocating that for us, that's too extreme. But the idea that you save money long run by spending money early is a very, very dubious kind of thing. I think one example you gave that was good for that was the asphalt might be very cheap and that this would be a good time. But unless you can really demonstrate something like that, I think you're better to just not do something until it really has to be done, and that's how you'll keep taxes lower. And if you keep looking forward, what can I do now? There's little free cash to get rid of here. There's,
Yeah, Dave,
that's why I hate
thought,
having free cash.
No,
because Don just says, well, we've got all these horrible things happening this year. but we've got enough free cash to cover it. We have enough free cash to cover it, it's because we raised $750,000 more than we needed last year to run the government.
Well, I think the capital plans that we're seeing in the committee from the department heads that bring them in are not generally littered with items that are staggering towards their end of useful life. They tend to be situations like we encountered last year and the year before, like at the Sampson Road culvert, where Harold himself was too nervous, they waited too long to actually repair the culvert, and he could have had a more significant scenario here too. So I do think in some of the discussions we've had with Bill Cleary, in fairness to him, he's had that sort of tenor of review of his own piece here, but what we could do, to Michael's point earlier too, when we look at this, is maybe sort of give folks a sense of the vintage of some of the repairs that are going in, as well as the dollars. That'll give you sort of some background, and the town members a little bit more background on what folks are actually spending their money on. You know.
Yeah, and Dave, I thought I made myself clear that I'm not looking to accelerate and spend, and maybe smoothing out is the wrong word, but again, I just point to the columns. The columns are sitting in FY17 when I know they were sitting in other years, and so my hope was it's this committee working with the departments to say, really, when is the year for the column?
See,
right?
I'm delighted that things keep moving back in time, because...
And I'm fine too, but the first question I have is, what's the year on the column, right? Because if it was 3 years ago, then what degree is it 17, and why couldn't it be 18 or 19?
Yeah, I'll bet you that we don't do those 3 culverts in the next fiscal year. Harold very rarely does more than 1 or 2 of those big projects a summer. I bet it's either 1 or 2 that get done. So I don't think 17 is going to be as bad as it looks now, because some of that stuff is going to get moved out.
All right.
It's possible.
Anything else, guys? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Well, I have a philosophical disagreement. This stuff is very, very useful, and I appreciate very much that you guys do that. Good to know what's out there, even if you disagree on when you should address it.
Well, repaving, you pay now or you pay later.
Well, that was a good example of doing it early.
All right. So we are, a couple of things on the business. We're not going to meet next Tuesday evening. All right. We are going to meet, we'll pick up again on the 10th. There was one, I want to say there was one person slated that Linda was working on getting one person in for next week, so they were able to reposition and go to the 10th, where we have a more a busier evening that night. So hopefully not as busy. So it's the 10th is shaping up to be Gary. Perwack is going to come back in. The town planner. And so I'm forgetting, I think someone else, but, so...
Is it conservation?
Yeah,
Are they towards the end of the month? She just told me.
Would it be on here?
No, because we don't let people. So we won't meet next Tuesday, and then we'll pick things up again. But for the department heads, I believe we're pretty much through. Maybe there's town planner. Honestly, there's one, maybe 2 other departments that we need to meet with, and then there's and then from there, it's, we all then have to talk more about the fuel, all those and how that's gonna impact. And I know you were, Ted, when we were talking earlier today, you were still waiting for some numbers.
Waiting for some numbers, but I can give you the methodology tonight.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have a discussion on the, kind of how we right-size this budget? I mean, my intuition is that we're gonna need to bring it in, shrink it, and, where and who and how, So there's gonna be a meeting after we go through this.
Yeah, I mean, so,
I'm the new-
it's,
new guy here.
yeah,
It's a
so
great question, and yes.
we're not gonna meet next Tuesday, but after that, it's March 10th. And so we've got, for all intents and purposes, the remainder of March and April, to,
We've got to have stuff in to vote.
yeah,
The
that's,
selectmen are going to vote what the second
exactly. So
weekend.
we gotta finalize the budget. We're gonna start talking about warrant articles.
Because we make recommendations on those as well, whether or not they're tied, well, they're inevitably in time.
And then in the course of all that, we need to work on a presentation. The advisory board delivers a presentation on town floor. So you heard a little bit about that tonight.
Brad did it last year.
It seemed like there was a hint to have a slide.
No.
I got that sense that there was a particular slide.
I was just thinking, and I'm the new guy, so I may be totally wrong on this, but this OPEB business, for example, which is going to come down hard, and it's a difficult concept to present. Do we want, we didn't have a reporter here, but is there some way we can sort of get the word out that this is, we've got to do something about this, and it is going to impact on the budget?
Hand me the annual town.
Somebody could do a press release, maybe not this.
Yeah,
well, that's what I'm talking about, having been in that business.
I need to get educated on that because I'm seeing line items that seem to be related, and I need to understand a lot of things.
Yeah.
No, it's
I think
not
that
an easy
I will do
understanding.
my.
Or a letter to the editor. I don't know how we want to do it. And I'm not necessarily volunteering, but I'd be happy to edit those who know more about finance, because I know more about the language.
Yeah.
I just think, that's a hell of a thing to spring on people. You don't
Well,
want
you know what we usually.
you pop that at town meeting and people are going to go,
Well, they get this.
It won't show up at town meeting, it's
It
just a
won't.
line.
No, that's right.
And it's just
But-
gonna
I
but-
kind
You're
of
right.
wanted to show up at town meeting.
I want people
All
to
the
know
people
about it.
watching.
Well, it's gonna show up,
I agree.
Mr. Lindsay will be sure to
But
bring.
someone will probably propose an amendment to it.
Right.
Right.
And then, we
Can't imagine who.
will probably mention it in the advisory statement.
Oh, we
As
should.
do
Oh, absolutely.
We should
So
definitely do
they,
that.
people get this way in advance, they
Something.
take the time to read it.
So this,
And
which
it
is,
goes within.
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And it's in here, it's something we will
Right,
add
well, I guess
to our
what I'm
statement, and
thinking is, when I
everything's
cover
online, if
municipal
somebody wants
government
to
for the
read.
Providence Journal, I, as a reporter, went through the town reports for the 3 towns that I covered and did a town meeting advance story. I don't know, and I don't know how thorough. The Independent is not the old Providence Journal. It's probably better than what's left of the Providence Journal now, but 40 years ago, it was a pretty impressive paper, and, we had to make sure that we covered municipal government. And I'm just wondering if it would help to do a press release or something to help Nan.
No, I think it's a great idea.
Just because there aren't that, sure, everybody who goes to town meeting should read their town report, or at least read the committee reports. I don't know if
And
they
I'm
do.
sure the selectmen have talked about it quite a bit. No?
Not yet.
Well, I think there's a different medium. I think people get their information and news in a lot of different ways. We would all like to think that there's 1,000
No, I'm not
people.
talking about that, because there's always a reporter in there that writes an article about everything that's said and stated in
Yeah.
the selectmen's
Right.
meetings, and it would go, if they said the word OPEB, it would have been in some article somewhere in that.
Right, and I don't think that that's
And
really come up
reporters
yet.
can be watching this program anytime.
Right, they
Yeah.
can.
Get some
I
sense
know.
of-
I know, they can, and maybe they do. I hope they do, but I'm just, it's just an observation as much as anything. I mean, when I came in here, we were talking about OPEB, and I had to finally ask, what is
What is it?
OPEB?
Yeah, I personally think it's a great idea. I mean, I think you have, whether it's the the agreement of this committee, or you as a individual citizen, if you feel compelled to reach out to a reporter and say, hey, here's a story idea, I think it's.
Okay, but I don't want to step out of my, I don't want to be talking out of school.
Yeah, no, and I so, because there are two different thoughts on it. It's not, you don't have to fund OPEB right now.
Right.
You can, and when I last year joined this committee, I was on that boat. I saw the other things that this town needed, and I didn't understand the full extent and liability of it, and so it was very easy for me to, to just forget about it, and it passed over last year, and we formed a committee and gave me a year to get educated, and I needed a year to get educated.
It's very good.
And I would say I'm still not educated because I walk into there are experts on this stuff, but so what concerns me is that we're kind of becoming the group that's supposed to say, hey, this is. I can say, and I felt that the need to get educated because I'm on the finance committee, and I needed to understand that this is a liability that's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's not going away, and it is evident to the process of the budget. It needs to go in there, and at the same time, I think it deserves more than a slide. I think it deserves more. Maybe a presentation. And I'm not saying we should do the presentation, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I get stuck at that point of, do we?
Well, I don't know.
Is it a
We're
letter
the
in the editor?
advisory committee. We're supposed to make a recommendation to
Right.
advise people, and I mean, I'm totally new at this, so that I don't know.
No, I get it.
But it's quite obvious to me. Now, some of it may just be my liberal bias, just as you don't want infrastructure to collapse before you start doing anything about it. You certainly don't want this huge liability to grow every year. But I couldn't tell you, do we want to fund the full amount this year when we've got all the snow removal and everything else? But then,
So that's why I pulled this up.
it's this huge sort of Damocles.
I thought we were gonna get this tonight, to be honest with you. This is like an 8-page document, they go through. This is another town, this isn't our town, but it's great, and it explains it's from the advisory committee, so it's of
Okay, so some other
Wellesley.
advisory committee did.
Yeah, and put together, now, see, we weren't invited to be on the OPEB committee.
Right.
We're adjunct or whatever, I don't know, and that's fine, I think, I didn't have any knowledge of it last year, but, they've got things about what the current pension plan is, the pension funding, the funding schedule, all the different, nuances of that, the history, the peer comparisons to other towns.
You got that where?
It's a good question.
Was it
It's
online?
the town, it was part of it was the pension and OPEB funding 2004 annual town meeting of Wellesley. So it was like a presentation.
Online?
Yes, online.
Yeah.
Everything I know about OPEB came from online.
2014.
2014,
All
correct.
right. All right.
So, I mean, it's got graphs and,
Yeah, well, Wellesley.
So tonight when they came in with one page, not to, I mean, and
What,
there's been a
5
lot of
minutes on
back
fuels?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
you know, information given, so I don't want to, I'm not knocking them, I wish, especially for you guys who are brand spanking new,
Right.
that you had seen something like this, because it was helpful.
So is it
Sorry.
is it electronic? Can you?
Yeah,
It's on a website.
It's on a website.
It's on their
I'll
town
forward it
website.
I'll give it to Linda to forward to you.
Beautiful. All right. So, are we done with the OPEB discussion?
For now.
For tonight?
Just for now.
Dave?
You had mentioned your timing. The warrant closes in early April. So you have, if you're not meeting next Tuesday, you have 3, maybe 4 meetings. And you've got to go through all the warrant articles to make recommendations on those. Plus finish up the budget, and as Ted says, you might need a pretty long session on right-sizing the budget if you don't want to get into override.
I would have to get into the
Yeah.
school budget.
So,
Yeah.
well, but that's just a yes or no
And that
question.
revolves some recycling back and.
If you want, so
No.
here's the thing,
It's a yes or no vote.
So if you really want to be effective on the school budget, there's a school committee meeting tomorrow,
I'm gonna be there.
and there's a school committee meeting, I don't know when the next one is for sure, but then the vote is the
Same place,
11th.
same time.
Yes, yep, and that's where you're gonna make it.
5:30 or 7 tomorrow?
6, I think. isn't
I can't make it, so I don't know.
6 o'clock is their usual
Usually
meeting
six.
time.
Six.
That 5 o'clock
That
was
was the budget
special
one.
because of the...
6.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they have to vote on
That's
that by
definitely-
March 11th.
Yeah, they're supposed
11th
to,
or 15th.
supposed to
Yeah.
discuss it tomorrow night and then discuss it again at their next meeting and vote on it at their next meeting.
So, oh,
They meet
okay, so
every
there's
2 weeks.
discussion, and, so that's the 11th then, I think, that they're discussing and voting at the
And
11th.
voting,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be the 11th. All right. So yeah, how about
Fuel. We use fuel in boilers and vehicles, and in FY14, $125,000. And since we've all seen the price of energy decrease, the question is, how much of that should we reflect in FY16? So let me go through the methodology. I don't have all the precise numbers. I got close numbers, but don't have the precise numbers. I'm going to start with the factor, which comes from the Energy Information Agency, EIA, which is .gov or something, and then we'll get into our numbers and how we apply that to it. This is just a screen print. Yeah, pass it around. Dave, I got one here.
Thank you.
Oh, I see one, so, oh,
You can use,
okay.
is it the same?
Anyway, real simply, this is a screen print from EIA. Don't pay any attention to the left side. That just, they scroll different energy things there, and it just, when it took the picture, oil happened to be the one, could have been electricity or gasoline. But they give a price summary of 2013, 14, 15, and hopefully on the ones that were printed in landscape, you see a 2016. And all I did was take these prices per unit of energy, price per gallon, price whatever, and converted their calendar years into fiscal years. That way, so now we have a price. And then I can take fiscal year, by taking a half a year of 13 and a half a year of 14, I come up with FY14, by example. And by half a year of 15 and half a year of 16, come up with FY16. And as long as the curve is pretty flat, it's a reasonable assumption. And so now if we know the price that we had here in 2014 fiscal year, after we've gotten that, and we know the price in FY16 fiscal year, we have a ratio. And we can use that ratio to apply to our FY14 actual spend. So we're not taking anybody's nationwide price of oil or gas or anything. We're just taking the relative change from fiscal year 14 to 16 as done by EIA. Now you ask, how good is this forecast? It's, I believe I could say it's subjective because it is, the government doesn't, they're not into futures and buying and selling, that kind of thing. Along with the forecast, they do have a report. I didn't print it all, it's 68 pages, and they go into all kinds of their methodology. There's an overview here. I'm not going to review that. All kinds. Here's a regional gasoline price model, how they do gasoline. If you're interested in calculus and functions and sigmas and all that, they have things for the mathematician. So.
And that, wait, come back to me, Ted. That's all for their assumptions, or?
It's all for how the methodology.
That's the methodology for their projection.
For that little number that was slightly construed by you based on making it fiscal, but then coming from.
Yeah, backing up from this number is probably hundreds of people working on.
Got it. Very good.
The input to this report. I mean, 69 pages telling you how they did it.
Yep.
So I'm just saying, I believe it to be a high-quality number. It's not somebody that doesn't have credentials just pulling numbers. It's a well-studied,
But even to your point, it's a government agency as opposed to, say, ExxonMobil,
right,
who is coming up with a number to, turn around and justify to shareholders, right? It's so, okay.
Now, let's look at our specific data. Dave, I hope I have enough copies for you. Maybe we can share. Or, let me see if I have one in my book here.
I could just look over Connie's shoulder.
Yeah,
You can sit there if you want. It's fine with me.
you can see that. Joe knows me. I can look at yours, yeah.
Okay. Let's just go across the top, and we have, some of this data is extraneous. I should have, cleaned it up a little bit more, but we've got FY 13 oil gallons, propane gallons, and then FY 14 oil gallons, FY 14 propane gallons, and of course the propane is only for the library fuel. And then I did an FY 14 spend on gasoline, FY 14 spend on diesel. And so the next column over is the FY heat fuel spend. So what that is just taking those, you don't see them, the dollars per gallon, but the 20,596 is what we spent for propane at the library. And the town hall boiler is the 8379. The town barn was 4380, and the police department's 17,781. This is actual dollars spent, and these are boiler fuels. And FY14 was a year that had 8,600 degree days, heating degree days, and that's probably more, about 10% more than the previous year, and 20% maybe more than the year before that. So it's a outlier as far as high number of heating degree days.
Can you explain just really quick what degree days means?
A heating degree day is you take a 24-hour period and you take the minimum temperature and you take the maximum temperature in a degree day and you take the average. And then you take the difference between that average and 65 degrees. And that's the number of heating degree days today. And then you do that tomorrow and you just add them all together.
Wow.
So if you're at 65, you have 0 heating degree days. And then they do cooling from the top down.
That's so 65 is the magic number.
I've never done cooling, I only had heating. These came from Juniper Farms on my oil bill, and I keep track of that kind of stuff. I presume it's relatively accurate.
Actually, no one gives that.
Okay. So going across, now we're starting into the forecasting part of it. That middle column under the SUPP and the title is just the spend on FY14.
So Ted, let's just, before we go to the forecast, let's just stop and make sure everyone is in agreement, all on the same page. Any questions so far?
Oh, yeah, ask any interrupt.
I did.
No, I know. Does everyone, because when I was talking to Ted, and what we came out of the last meeting was, we had to spend some time, talking more about this, and my biggest hang-up was understanding the methodology to then apply it, and so Ted's been great at putting all this together, so I wanted to just make sure that everyone is cool.
Yeah, and we're going to roll through the boiler part of it first, and then we'll get to vehicles later, so. And the FY16 price estimate, that 249, that is from Osterman, and the way they got that is, I think, extremely conservative. They took the last 5 years and averaged it. So, it's...
When you say they, meaning Osterman?
Osterman did that.
Okay.
They had nothing to do with the EIA data. We haven't used that yet. That's the 249. And if you take that 249 times the propane gallons that were used in FY14, that's where that $15,871 comes from. So that's, that FY16 price times the FY13 volume is the 15,871. So that would suggest, that's for 13. Now
That's
14,
14.
excuse
Okay.
me, moving over one column
You did say 14 to
is,
start with.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So now moving over one column, that's the FY16 price from Osterman times the FY14 volume. So that's the number that we're really keying into because of that, and you can see the higher degree days reflected there. Now, just at our committee's request, we said, let's look at what the FY16 request was for, and also on the budget worksheet is an approved amount. So if it's there, I wrote it down. So that's propane. So the proposal would be, should the gallons remain the same, and they're going to change a little bit, I think. But assuming they are, as shown here, the proposal would be to change the requested amount of 20,000 to 18 or 18.3. I won't go into the weeds on why the volume's going to go up, but we're going to make sure that the numbers that I've gotten from the library and Osterman agree with the numbers that our accounting department has. And when they're all in agreement, identical, then that will be the number that goes on here.
And then you really know the actual.
Okay. Now let's just drop down and look at the oil. And so at the column it says FY16 price estimate. And again, I haven't used EIA data yet. This 245 from Peterson is their estimate of 2015-2016 winter. And I tested it against the EIA, and it's spot on. I mean,
They're using me.
yeah, they're using it too. I mean, it was, so.
Great.
Anyway, there's this 245, so you take the 245, and I'm going to skip over 2 columns to FY16 price times FY14, and you get, say, $6,306 for the town hall, and they've requested $7,000. So there's a modest decrease there. Houghton Building, unfortunately, to the best of my knowledge, the oil is buried under maintenance, which puzzles me. But, so I think we need to deal with that. Anyway,
Are you talking, I'm sorry, did you just say the police? So who?
No,
No,
Houghton.
the
Oh,
whole,
Houghton, thank you.
Houghton Building.
Got it, sorry.
I think it's under the 195,420 or something. Is that right? Or it's under one of those. Town buildings, maybe it's under.
192?
Maybe 190, I think. But that's, I think it's under maintenance there, 190, 5240. But I don't know, because it doesn't, and it's not broken out, and I have,
No, you're right,
Those-
192's town.
that's right,
Okay.
there's a lot.
I thought there was a separate Houghton building.
No, I thought I was looking at town hall. It isn't.
It must be.
Same.
It must be town buildings. Yeah. All right, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ted.
Go ahead.
Now let's look at the vehicles, and a major assumption for what we're about to propose has to be that the number of vehicles has not materially changed, up or down, and the driving habits are not going to be materially different. Here the key thing is we're keying off of spend. And so you go to the middle of the page, you have FY14 spend on gasoline and FY14 spend on diesel. And no sense going reading numbers to you, they're there. And then if you take the EIA data and, gosh, did I not, I don't know if I printed my ratio is on another page, which I don't think I printed out for you.
It was 2.73, wasn't it?
It varied for the fuel,
Oh.
some over 0.75, 0.78, 0.80, somewhere in there. And it varied whether it was gasoline or it was diesel. And anyway, you apply that number. Here's the sheet. For gasoline, the factor is 0.735, and for diesel, the factor is 0.787, and that's the one that matched directly with this. So you take the actual spends in FY14, multiply them by those factors that EIA presents, and you get the third column in from the right, and there's the requested amount, and there's the approved. And so we can, I think once we get all the FY14 dollars precise, and we get all the FY14 gallons or purchase units precise, then we can discuss what's the appropriate, how to adjust the request.
So Ted, question for you? In your process with these, with the gasoline and the diesel, the fuel for machinery, so to speak, that's non-heating items, have you been looking back at our current budget, at the run rates of things at all? You know that sheet that Julie gives us? I can do this.
The sheet, the budget worksheet?
The expense ledger that shows like to the date in this year.
The expense to date and...
In fiscal 15.
No, I have not looked at that.
Okay.
I just never, I really didn't touch FY 15 because it's unknown, and FY 15's got a lot of volatility. I mean, it started high and it's going low. I mean, it'd be good for volume, but I'm not sure. Okay, I just...
No, it's okay. No, it's okay.
Picked FY 14.
But you're right, it's volatile. It goes back to every time I start to get comfortable, like, oh, it's volatile. I get it. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think we do need to respond to the decrease in fuel. It's $125,000 FY14. And just the numbers we've looked at here are $28,000. So it gets you 100 and a quarter down to 97. And, you know, that's not the final number, but that's indicative.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great.
No, summer clothes. Okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, everything that you've laid out, Ted, you know, where we're talking about the heating, you know, stuff in the top part, the library, the town hall, Houghton, you know, I mean, personally, I feel comfortable where those are shaping up. You know, where it gets a little uncertain is when you're trying to determine the usage. But, you know, I think we can try and spend some more time on that part of it. I know you were still working on, you know, getting more solid numbers, but where the degree, I suppose you could have someone, you know, come into the town hall, right, and in a given year decide to, oh, you know what, I think I'm going to jack up the temperature, right, and so does that happen? No, but can you foresee in a given year the call volume has gone up and therefore there's more mileage being used by the cruisers and therefore more gas?
Well, and how much does the lower costs play a factor in the increase in amount of time on the highway?
I guess all I'm trying to say is it's more difficult to try and get a number and forecast on that.
It is. I've forecasted energy for 13 mills around the world, and I was surprised. It came out within 2%.
Yeah.
And you're forecasting volume and unit cost of the energy. And places that I've never even been. Don't want to go to.
You don't want to go to.
So if you have enough elements,
yeah,
some might be over, under a little. We may have to, you know, grab some dollars from someplace. I'm very comfortable on the heating.
Me too.
Exactly.
Me too.
Because you've got this belt and suspenders with respect to the heating degree days, which is your base year is very, very high. But if you have the same number of cruisers and what's to say they're going to run a lot more? I mean, if they're running right now.
Well, no, to your point of just having more stuff, to more data to feel better.
I believe in minimum adequate budgets and not gilding the line.
Yeah, no, all I was gonna do, and this was really for my own purpose of, you know, feeling better about the usage, the bottom numbers where there's more usage. I was gonna go back and look through, you know, other years and do some calculations to get it.
That's why I asked if he had already done that, because I feel the same way, like that's where I'm going next.
To get a sense.
Yeah, because diesel this year, not diesel.
Right, because we know what the FY spend for gas was. You know, I can go back. I personally, you know, am interested in going back, finding out the number spent, applying it to, you know, the factor to say what would it what was it really, and what would it have been?
Well, that was a question I was trying to ask you last time, Ted. Is there anywhere where they list, where they rate their own performance on this model? So
I have not found
You haven't
it.
found-
I have been looking for
I've been
it.
looking
You know what
for
I
it.
found instead? I found U.S. refinery strike affects 1/5 of the national capacity.
Right, and that's
No,
going to go up.
I know.
I did find it for we made a forecast last month for, I'll call it the prompt month, and then they analyzed how close they came to the 1 month ahead forecast. Oh, big deal. I mean, they were off, you know, fraction of
They
a
must.
percent or something.
Of course they published that one.
Yeah, but I take you back to the 69 pages of.
Right, that's their methodology.
I mean, they get information from the State Department on stability of countries and
Right, right.
exchange
So, but here's
rates.
But how did they do? I'm not, you know, I understand how, what their model is. I mean, I don't understand it, but I saw that same 69-page.
I trust, look at, I'm pointing now, God, watch out for me, it's time to go yet. I harped over that question, if you can't trust your government, who do you trust? And I thought to myself, I trust, for things of this nature, I trust my local government more than I trust my national government. I don't think they know our fleet like our department heads do.
So all they're doing is forecasting prices. They don't forecast volumes. We
Right,
supply.
so that's why, like this, for the heating, that totally makes sense to me, because I don't think the building size is gonna change. There might be some little habitual things within it, you know, going up and down, but that's, those numbers are, to me, are safe, are relatively safe reductions.
All right, well, you know,
So
it
that's-
it gives
I
us,
think we have more data and more proof of our number in our number than the numbers that we were presented in the budget. I mean, I don't know where they asked for it or came from for FY16.
Well, that's-
I know where
yeah.
ours came from.
so Ted, you still, this is, to me, tremendously helpful. This is great, and thank you for all the
And
extra
we'll
work.
revisit it again.
Yeah, absolutely. You're,
We're gonna go spend another 2 weeks looking at this.
no, because you,
I do, you can have them all.
because Ted,
I need this one.
You can have them all.
I want the landscape view.
but Ted, you're still looking at getting some additional data, and this will,
Without going into the details.
No,
we're gonna-
exactly.
I've
We're
already
gonna-
see some things here.
Yeah.
Questions, yeah.
You're fantastic, Ted. Thank you for
This is
doing
great.
this.
We're gonna,
I personally feel very good on the top part, and
I agree.
we'll give you courage on
oh, yeah, believe me, I will get there on the bottom. I just want to take a look at, you know, to me, we've got the 14 number, and I'll pick on the police department, but we've got the 14 number for police gasoline. I know in all my records I have, you know, 13, 12, 11, and I can just simply take that number, apply the same formula, and get a sense of where they are. Just so, for me, the more back I can go, the better I'm going to feel about those numbers.
I
That's all.
wasn't here for fire department diesel, but why did you approve?
Because we knocked them
3,000?
down.
I know, but they used in 1441, and they requested 4,
And
but
we
they
said,
used 41, and you went down to 3. I don't understand.
Because we're
We
assuming
took
this
them from
reduction.
4 to 3.
Right, but they typically spend over 4.
They
No.
requested 4. We had no control over what they requested.
I know, but if you look at the history, just on 14,
Yeah.
they spent 40.
at the time, there was a very good reason why we did. I can't remember.
But because we
Maybe
were
their
reducing
truck
it by
is
that factor.
efficient or something. I don't know.
Yeah, there was something about the truck.
More
Maybe it was
efficient.
But we had
Oh.
That was the gas, that was the.
Was it gas?
It was the gas. They have fewer gas
It's
trucks than they
Diesel,
did.
but I'm looking
No, that's
at diesel.
DPW.
That's
Oh,
DPW.
that's DPW, oh.
But
Fewer
you're onto
diesel
it, but that's
Right,
DPW.
But we had
There was,
we had a fuel discussion light, you know.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
night,
Right, I'm just
and we-
wonder where
Right.
they
Yeah, we
are.
kind of took off that.
You don't have where they are in FY15 right now,
I
what the
do.
spend is, what they requested and what the spend
For
was?
fire?
Yeah. Fire,
I
diesel.
thought you had to go.
Yeah, well, I'm really curious, I've got a question mark
Now
there,
you're
and I
getting
asked
into
you
it.
a question, and you didn't remember why you did it, and I'm wanting to know.
We can go
why
back
you
to the
did it.
notes.
Yeah.
We have
I'm ready to
minutes.
go, you're right.
We do. You know what? We don't have minutes tonight. There's the happy ending to the evening. I just couldn't get them done in time. I was looking up energy stuff and school stuff.
All right.
This would go out.
So someone's gonna get Connie a number.
So what they requested in 15 and what they've spent.
Well,
I don't
if you
remember.
have FY13 spends
Yeah,
for all these people,
I'll give it to you.
yeah, give them to me and I'll
Spend
I
today.
can squeeze
If you
another
have
column in.
anything.
Might be number 8
Let's see.
font, but
If you have.
I thought I had
any
it.
All right.
You know what, I had it at home.
Okay.
But it's, doesn't
curious.
Julie send that to us every, don't we all get
Yeah,
that?
Yeah.
I don't have it with me.
No worries, that's why I'm looking it up now. I just, for Ted's, is Ted on that email?
Yeah, I can get you
Do you
that
get
number.
the expenditure ledger? Not the,
Well, we have to
Budget.
discuss fuel again, I won't forget.
Yeah, oh, no, you won't.
I get,
Try not.
All right,
if-
you guys interested in going home?
oh yeah.
All right, is,
you know what, I'll send it out.
I'll entertain
Okay.
a motion
So
to
moved.
adjourn this meeting
Wait, what
and
about,
go
do we have
home.
numbers?
I so moved.
Second.
Hold
Put
on.
down whoever you want.
No, we don't
Motion
have.
to adjourn takes precedence over
Transfer request?
craziness.
I mean,
Is this
permission to
Yes.
overspend?
No.
Oh. That wasn't that on?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 No, I'm not ready to adjourn yet, and you don't
Okay.
hate me for it.
Oh,
There was a revised email that was sent out, and it said that we needed to,
yes.
Oh,
right.
review the,
the $150
That's right.
overspend.
Request
I don't have it in front of me.
yeah.
Request to
Is that a
overspend.
new one, or is that just we have to sign
423
a
by
warrant? Do we
$150,000.
have to sign a warrant? What is,
Well,
I
he
don't-
should have gotten paperwork, which is why he's
Yeah.
not, it's
Well-
not on his,
He's not here, there's no request, right?
There was
No
an email.
transfer request?
there was an
no-
email that was added, it was added to the agenda for tonight.
Yeah, but it's
Right.
not,
and
So we
he,
don't-
so
they-
Brad would have gotten it, so hold on, so one sec to look and see. I'm sorry to do that to you, I know.
No, that was on my mind, and then it just got,
Well, that's why I forgot about OPEB, it's stored right there.
I have an
and I
email
didn't- I
from
didn't
Linda.
say anything.
I have an email from Linda today at 2:05.
right?
It was yesterday or maybe.
yeah,
And-
I thought I had a copy of it too.
Well,
The one
I-
for
if it-
205 just says that
Exactly,
the
so-
bill isn't gonna be here.
if it was, I don't, if there was something yesterday, great, but today, there's,
there's
This is what
there's
came through.
nothing,
He'd need one, yeah.
I would need,
He would need
I don't,
one, but.
That's what came through today.
Oh, was
Or
that?
no, I'm sorry, Friday.
Yes,
This came Friday.
okay.
Okay, no, okay.
So,
That's
I
right.
got one
So
that
the-
came through today.
The selectmen are, oh, so you have a newer version than me?
Yeah, there is a newer version that came out today,
At 2:05,
and I printed that out
and,
too.
which is this right here, and there's nothing on here
Okay,
that talks about
forgive me.
another 150. You just gave him 150 a week ago.
Well, okay, that's,
I'm sure it's another. It better not.
no, that was, Ted and I were talking about that as we were driving over. We thought it was probably the final paperwork on the,
It's probably the selectmen taking our approval.
Oh, so I just called out a mistake, I'm sorry.
Either way, it was
Well, no, it
4-1 in a.
To get out of here.
We don't need a majority
Yes,
to
yes.
close out the meeting. Meeting done. You wanna stay up
No,
for the
no,
night?
God, no, I
Oh my
just didn't
God.
want to miss that if that was, they were waiting on that.
If there is any paperwork, Brad's the only one who has to sign it anyway, so.
Hold access.
Which
Well,
I
yeah.
don't have any
Yeah.
anyways.
All right. Oh, and I follow what you're saying. We don't have to, do we have to approve it though? We would have actually had to take a